A girl looks at herself in the mirror, wondering how this happened. When she woke up, she was in a strange room, completely different than she'd ever seen before. Was this perhaps that so-called reincarnation she often read about in manga and novels? Did she die? She recognizes her new face, but the body and age were a little different from what she remembered reading the novel. She reincarnated in the body of Seline Eldred, the evil sister of the heroine from her favorite novel, Love of the Goddess. Seline abused her position as the Duke's daughter and lived a lavish life after mistreating the heroine, her sister Adele. She questioned why she reincarnated as the villain, because in this story, Seline was fated for miserable death at the hands of the male lead, Prince. She lived a hard life in her previous one, having had chronic illness and being sickly, bedridden, and suffering every day. Because of that, the only thing that brought her any semblance of joy was reading manga and novels. But now, reincarnated in the villain's body, she could move freely. And just as she experiences exuberance, she trips. She probably needed more practice before running. The maids worry as they check if she was hurt, and as she gets up, she notices someone peeking through the door. It was her cute, little, pink-haired sister, the lovely heroine, Adele. Unlike Seline, Adele was known to be a sweet, beautiful girl. In the novel, Adele meets the hero, Crown Prince Louis, and falls in love. Meanwhile, Seline, who she was now, had feelings for Louis and mistreated Adele, and the second prince works as a dark sorcerer, going after Louis to hunt him down. This was supposed to be a story of two lovers who end up happily ever after by overcoming obstacles. Sadly, Seline is the only one who dies. But if she had a sweet sister like Adele, she would adore her with all her heart. The reason Seline gets killed in the first place is because she bullies Adele, so she figured there was still time for her to change the bad outcome of the story. Reborn Seline decides to become friends with her sister. That way, she could live a peaceful life without worrying about death. Initially, she was quite sad about being turned into the villain of the story, but now felt grateful to be provided with such a healthy, strong body. She was sure with a body like this, she could eat whatever she wanted and go wherever she pleased. She was going to use this chance to live a normal, happy life and try all the things she couldn't experience in her first one. Also, adding losing weight to her list of goals. Thinking she was too chubby to find love. Filled with determination, she calls over her sister, and Adele gets startled and runs away. Judging by the looks of it, Seline could tell the bullying must have started pretty young, because Adele was so afraid of her. She was already done for. Seline tried her best to make amends with her sister, but Adele would either run away or be guarded by her maids. Seline was bummed out she couldn't even get close, but it made sense. She shouldn't be surprised she was being treated like this. She wouldn't let this discourage her though. Realizing she'd have to take her time to make friends with Adele, she decided to work on her diet in the meantime. The chubby girl ran outside, stumbling. She was huffing, puffing, gasping out of breath. But this was still nothing compared to the pain she had in her past life. Running into Adele and her mother, the two would be startled as Seline let off a breathless "hello." Putting their wariness aside, Seline would continue her run. Her father nervously stared at her from above through his window, and his servant explained she'd been running around the premises every day lately, as well as making more contact with Lady Adele. The Duke was surprised to learn the contact wasn't for harassment like usual, but just simply small talk. During another luxurious dinner at the Eldred household, Adele couldn't believe Seline was having such a tiny plate. Even the maids were whispering amongst themselves that something must be wrong. Seline usually ate double or triple the portions of everyone else. Her father asked what she was plotting, and at first, she didn't know what he meant, but then figured he thought she was planning something bad, since she'd only been bad up to this point. Seizing the opportunity to show she's changed, she sobbed as she apologized to everyone for causing so much trouble all this time. She admitted to realizing her own mistakes, and claimed from now on, she'd reflect on her behavior and be careful not to shame her family's name, as well as work on maintaining her figure. She then made a personal apology to Adele for all the mean things she's done. She admitted that she was jealous that Adele was sweet and loved by everyone, unlike herself, and that she couldn't help but bully her because of that. She understood if Adele wouldn't forgive her right away, but hoped for it one day. She then asked her father to prepare her a tutor, preferably someone who could teach her magic. And the maids went mouths agape with disbelief. They couldn't believe this was coming from the same girl who despised even seeing written words. 1 week later, Seline wiped her sweat finishing another workout. She was getting stronger little by little and was now able to run for longer distances. She was so heavy to begin with, she lost 11 pounds in the blink of an eye, or 5 kilograms for the inferior metric users. Stumbling onto her sister, Adele would respond to her greetings on this day. But when Adele would try to explain they had an important guest visiting, her maid would shuffle her away, leaving Seline by herself. Seline assumed they wanted to keep her out of sight. Not wanting to run into them, she decided to take the long way back to get some exercise. She'd suddenly stumble upon a cat and squealed over its cuteness. Her illness from her past life prevented her from interacting with animals. It hissed and clawed at her, but she'd quickly earn its affection. It jumped from her arms and ran away, and she turned, hearing her name being called. There stood a blonde-haired boy with golden eyes. She'd seen him so many times in the novel, she instantly recognized he was in fact the protagonist and first in line for the throne, Prince Louis Percival. She gasped. She couldn't believe the protagonist was here, but now realized that he was who her sister must have been talking about. It was no wonder they didn't want her around. In the novel, Seline loved Louis and was always making moves on him. He pointed out she seemed different somehow, and she only let out, yes, feeling embarrassed that she ran into him looking so sweaty. She was starting to understand why the real Seline fell in love with him. He was much more gorgeous in person. More importantly, he was so kind to Seline, despite her being such a nuisance. Adele found them, and with Seline fretting and trying to explain how she stumbled onto the prince, she figured this could be another chance for her to show how much she changed. She just needed to show them she clearly had no interest in Louis, even though she was obsessed with him before. She smiled, apologizing to him for being so unsightly, and made an excuse to dip out. Adele pleaded for Seline to come join them once she was done changing, and Seline couldn't believe Adele was so kind, despite all the bullying by her. She assured Adele she was fine and apologized for always being such a nuisance in the past, promising not to get in her way anymore. Seline was sure the protagonist couple would be fine now and couldn't wait to see the two being lovey-dovey, not knowing the prince seemed to be more fixated on her. Later, the tutor was flabbergasted that Seline got everything right while grading her tests. The tutor was blown away that Seline was thanking her for all the support, when in the past, Seline used to throw a tantrum during the first 5 minutes of lessons. Thanks to this tutor though, Seline's been able to educate herself about this world. Just being able to sit at her desk and learn things really made her happy. She was excited to start practicing magic next week. The heroine, Adele, embodied the power of the goddess, so surely Seline could use normal magic too. With her studies done, Seline decided to go exercise in the forest behind the mansion until dinner. She eavesdropped on the maids discussing how she had no interest in the prince anymore, and while the two of them speculated on what could have happened, Jenna figured Seline must have had a change of heart. The others didn't believe this. After all, they say a leopard could not change its spots. Seline knew what they were saying wasn't wrong. She probably would have stayed the same had she not been reborn in this body. She was glad at least Jenna noticed her efforts and hoped more people would do the same. Catching her breath while resting on the ground, Seline felt truly alive. She rose up to begin another set, but decided to go towards something hiding behind the tree in front of her. She thought it was another cat at first, but instead found a child. She freaked out, asking if he was okay. With no answer from him, she checked his heart. It was still beating, so she decided to take him inside to treat him. His hood would slide off, and she noticed his body was covered in strange marks. The doctor explained it was a curse, and quite a powerful one. These words created an ache in Seline's heart. 2 days passed since she picked up the cursed boy. He slept the entire time, not having moved an inch. In that time, Seline learned holy water was the most effective way to weaken curses. The doctor believed the boy was likely born with this curse, and his parents thought it impossible to undo and abandoned him. If it continued, his life would be in danger. Seline stared sympathetically at the boy. He was still so young, she wondered how much he suffered. The people in the mansion despised him for being cursed as well. Her father told her he would take the boy to an orphanage, but she begged him not to. She knew no orphanage could give the boy proper treatment. Her father would ask why she was desperately trying to save this child, whom she had never met before, and she knew there was no way she could explain that his situation overlapped with what she's experienced in her past life. She was sick with an incurable disease and abandoned by her family. All she could do was sit back and wait for death. She didn't want him to be alone and go through what she dealt with. Promising not to cause her father trouble while she took care of the boy, he sighed, telling her to do whatever she wanted. Rumors spread about the curse being contagious, even though it wasn't, and raised concerns amongst people that the curse might bring bad luck. Everyone wanted to avoid it. Since bringing the boy here, they were even colder to Seline than before. She slapped her cheeks, pepping herself up. The best thing she could do for him now was to treat him with holy water. She gathered all her clothes and accessories, telling her maids to sell it all. She needed the cash to buy holy water. It was very rare and expensive, and since she told her father she wouldn't cause him any trouble, she couldn't ask him for money. Going to check on the boy, she saw he was aching with pain. She put a damp towel on his head, feeling the heat of his fever. Going out to change the tub of water, Adele would ask what was wrong, and with Seline explaining she was nursing the boy she brought home all by herself, she assumed people were suspicious of her, since she was known as a selfish brat who did whatever she pleased up until this point. Adele just clenched her fists tightly as she watched her sister continue on. Carrying out the heavy ice-filled water tub from the kitchen, Seline was running out of breath. Luckily, Jenna would lift the tub from her hands and offered to carry it in her stead. In the room, Seline asked if Jenna wasn't afraid of the curse, and Jenna answered she knew it wasn't contagious. Seline thought Jenna was so nice. Eventually, Seline would receive holy water. She couldn't believe that with everything she sold, she only received 3 small bottles. She'd go to pour them into the boy's mouth, with hope in her heart he'd get better soon, even if just a little. She yawned, getting very sleepy. Having done so much research and tending to him lately, she's become sleep deprived and passed out at his bedside. In the morning, she woke up drooling and rubbed her eyes, seeing the boy awake and staring at her. She went to reach for him, relieved he was awake, but he'd slap her hand away and give her a scowling look. She realized he must have been suffering alone all this time, so it was only natural he'd be on guard around strangers in an unknown place. She smiled, trying her best to ease his wariness by explaining how she brought him here, but he continued his harsh stare with no words. She, in turn, assured him she had no intention of harming him and would prepare him food so he could have the room to himself until he felt better. Outside the door, she thought about how she's never met someone with such cold eyes before. She didn't want to force anything, but felt it'd be nice to see him open up to her eventually. 3 days passed, and she did all she could to make his stay pleasant. But in this time, he hadn't touched his food even once. She tried eating in front of him to persuade him it wasn't poisonous, but that didn't work either. At this rate, he'd weaken and die. She'd sparkle, bringing him a full breakfast, but deflate, being met by silence and a lack of response from him. She then left the food on the table so he could eat when he felt like it, and was still determined not to give up. At noon, she placed flowers in his room for him. At night, she left him fresh clothes to change into. The next day, she tried to talk to him throughout the day, but nothing changed. He went a whole nother day without eating. Seline was discouraged, but Jenna would cheer her on, saying the boy would get hungry soon and that hopefully he'd eat tomorrow. But still, Seline was sad. She crashed onto her bed and sighed, wondering if she was doing something wrong, but then quickly shook it off, telling herself she needed to stay positive. With thoughts of her suffering in her past life, she couldn't leave him to die. She knew more than anyone how lonely it was to be alone. The next day, she tried again to serve the boy breakfast, but again was met with silence. It had been 5 days. The symptoms of the curse have eased off, but the doctor said his life would be at risk if he didn't start eating. Trying to feed him some soup, he'd knocked the spoon away from him onto the ground. Seline smiled through the pain, apologizing for trying to force him to eat. And while she said she'd begin cleaning right away, his eyes widened. He noticed she was crying so badly, she made the excuse she had something in her eye and ran out. At night, the boy heard people talking near his room. He snuck out, finding the maids discussing Lady Seline's intentions. They questioned why she took in a cursed child and sold her precious dresses and accessories to buy holy water for the boy. The value of the purchases was many years' worth of their salaries. He couldn't believe all that she sacrificed for him. The next day, the thoughts of yesterday's disaster plagued Seline's mind as she brought the boys breakfast. She entered with a cheery face anyways, and was pleasantly surprised to see he had put on the clothes she prepared for him. Then, after she set his food down, she went wide-eyed, seeing him begin to eat it. She was so thankful. During another family dinner, her father was happy to hear the successful progress she's made with the orphan boy. He then reminded her that at the end of next month, the first prince was hosting a garden party at the castle, and they needed to prepare for it. Adele hadn't decided what she was going to wear yet, and Seline inadvertently blurted out, "I wish I could pick a dress for you." She got so embarrassed she said that out loud. But Adele stood up to say, "Yes, please." She really wanted her big sis to help pick her dress. Seline got so happy. She wondered if Adele noticed how much she's changed. She yapped about it all the next morning after the boy finished eating again. Midway through her talking, she realized she started to lose weight, perhaps from looking after him. She asked the boy if there was anything he wanted from her upcoming shopping trip, considering books and toys, but then thought about how she didn't even know his name. She asked him what it was, and he answered, "Will," maintaining his stoic expression. It didn't matter though. Seline got so happy. She hoped they could get to know each other better. At Prince Louis's mansion, he felt somewhat troubled. He wondered if Lady Seline would be attending his party. He thought back to her apologizing for being a nuisance and telling him she wouldn't get in his way anymore. He still wanted to see her though. Seline was glowing seeing how beautiful Adele looked. Everything looked so good on Adele. She just couldn't choose what to buy for her. The two really bonded on their shopping trip. It was so fun, in fact. By the end of it, Adele started to cry. She was so happy. She had always wanted to be friends with Seline. The two embraced, crying to each other. And by the end of it, Adele fell asleep on her shoulder. From this point, Seline decided she'd put Adele first and make sure her sweet, adorable sister stayed happy. Returning to Will, she presented tons of new clothes, sweet treats, and toys, all for Will. Putting it next to him, she realized it was a lot. She didn't mean to get so much. She just had a lot of fun thinking about what he'd like. He blushed lightly, squeezed his shirt, and thanked her. Today really was a happy day for Seline. She hoped these cheerful days continued forever. 1 month later, Seline could see she had lost a lot of weight, but still, she was far from her ideal size when comparing herself to Adele. She'd come across her sister and stepmother, each giving her a pleasant, "Good morning, sister." "Good morning, Seline." Seline's been building a good relationship with the two of them lately. Then, making it to Will's room, he would tell her good morning as well. She praised him with a head pat for studying all morning. Will's recovery was going smoothly. He could walk and go about daily life, although he still got a fever from time to time. Recently, Seline would teach him how to read and write, as well as about their country. She became his tutor and thought he was so cute, listening to her every word. To her, he was an honest, good boy who followed her around like a baby chick. She saw him as her precious little brother and wanted to help him so that one day he could live independently. One day, when taking him out on a walk, she noticed some tasty-looking mushrooms. Will told her not to eat them, otherwise she wouldn't be able to breathe. He tried them before when he was hungry. Seline grew distraught, thinking about how he learned through experience. Thinking about his life until now broke her heart. She suddenly hugged Will, promising to protect him from now on. After their walk, she waved him off, telling him she was going to go for her run now, as part of her diet. He would ask, "What's the point?" She answered, "Because I'm fat, obviously." He'd then plainly respond, "You're already cute though," which would send her into being a flustered mess. This was the first time a guy had ever called her cute. She was grateful, but knew not everyone thought about her that way. She wanted to fall in love someday. She told him that truthfully, she was working hard to be ready for her one and only prince to appear. The word prince seemed to be something Will fixated on. Seline would then blabber about how Adele was going to look so pretty at the castle party tomorrow, and hearing all about how Seline decided Adele was her priority in life, his heart ached, because he was starting to want Seline all to himself. At the garden party, things were pretty awkward for Seline. Everyone pretty much hated her and only saw her as a troublemaker. The only thing good about this was the fact she was the Duke's daughter, so no one said anything directly to her face. She tried walking off to her own little corner, but Adele would grab and squeeze her arm. The other guests couldn't believe the two sisters had such a good relationship these days. Prince Louis then made his entrance to thank them for coming, and as the two girls bowed, Seline was thinking he looked even more glorious than usual. Seeing he was staring at her, she began to think maybe her dress really didn't look so good on her. She tried to make an excuse to escape, but Adele would move first, telling them her mother was calling for her, and told the prince to have a nice chat with his sister. Seline groaned internally. She wondered if Adele thought she still had feelings for the prince. Either way, he was more than happy to have alone time with her. He'd take her hand, and she wondered how this even happened. He mentioned that everyone seemed surprised at how much she's changed, and wanted to know what made Seline change. She answered she realized for a long time She's been a very selfish and terrible person. She couldn't tell him she transmigrated. She admitted to having taken advantage of her position and social status to do as she pleased, and that she was jealous of her much adored, beautiful sister. But from now on, she won't cause any more trouble. She tried to apologize to him, but he told her there was no need. He never thought of her as troublesome. Seline was glad he was so kind like her sister. She really wanted them to be together. After she mentioned she lost 20 pounds, he told her she's become even more beautiful. She saw that as just flattery, but was still happy to hear it. The two would chat for a while, and by the end of it, they both had so much fun. She was thinking if he ended up marrying Adele, they'd become family, but wasn't expecting him to turn towards her and ask, "Can I come see you again?" She assumed it was Adele he wanted to see, so she responded, "Of course." Seline got killed by Louis in the end. According to the novel, she was glad he had a better impression of her now. By the end of the party, Seline sighed. She couldn't make a single friend at the garden party. It was all because of the time she got angry and threw tea on someone. Adele told her not to worry though. She'd help out next time. Seline would then tell Will she was sure it'd be fun if he made friends too, but he plainly answered, "I don't need any," and shyly tugged at her shirt, adding, "As long as I have you." She squeezed on him, saying he was so cute, and she was happy he was so fond of her. She still saw him as her little brother, and she loved him so much. She'd then tell Adele she wasn't interested in Louis anymore, even though before reincarnating, she really wanted him. Will would ask who Louis was, and hearing he was the first prince, Will would fixate on the topic again. Hearing Seline used to like him made him grip his fists. The mansion was busy on a particular day in preparation for Prince Louis's visit. Seline complimented Will's diligence. She thought he was surprisingly smart. He retained everything he was taught, and his memory was exceptional. She was thinking he'd be able to do some simple jobs within the mansion soon. Seeing Prince Louis arrive from window view, Will mumbled, "He's completely different from me." They'd get a knock at the door, and a maid would tell Seline her father requested she attend a tea party with Louis. She thought it was strange, since he never invited her before, and promised Will she'd be right back. But he'd stop her, telling her not to go. Seline tried telling him not to worry, but he told her no, and held her arm tightly. She didn't know why, but he really didn't want her to go. She wanted to stay here too, but she couldn't turn down Louis's invitation, and when she left him behind, he stood by himself and questioned, why is it always about him? Seline didn't understand why the prince and her sister were only always talking directly to her. She tried hard to get them to talk amongst themselves, but for some reason, they wanted to talk about her. She tried her best to leave, but they wouldn't let her go. According to the novel, the two should be getting closer by now, but even an amateur in love like herself could tell the two didn't have any romantic feelings towards each other. Day after day after day, Louis would visit to see Seline. She wondered why he was coming, even on days Adele wasn't around. She asked her servant why he was coming so often, and the servant speculated that the king had told Louis to choose a fiancé. While Seline was oblivious to what her servant was saying, she thought there was no way she was going to be chosen. She'd been so busy lately, she hadn't had the time to relax and read Will books like she usually did. He got sad, thinking it's been all about Louis. Lately, Will's been clinging onto Seline even more than before. He wouldn't talk to Adele or Jenna or look anyone else in the eye. Seline was happy he was attached to her, but thought it wasn't good for him if he didn't take the time to mingle with others. She invited him to accompany her on a walk, and outside, they gathered at the beauty of the budding flowers. She asked him which ones he liked, and he answered, Seline. She was flabbergasted and red, but recomposed herself to say, I like you too, Will. He squeezed her hand and said, I love you the most, Seline. And close to her face, he told her, I want to be your number one. She thought it was too difficult to order people based on priority when there were so many in her life she found precious to her. So she responded, you and Adele are both my number one. And he seemed hurt by her response. Continuing their walk, he spotted Louis. Seline had no idea he was visiting today. Louis would ask if Will was the boy she was talking about before. Louis tried asking for Will's name, but instead of answering, Will only scowled at it. Seline could see Will really disliked the prince for some reason. She interjected to claim Will was just shy, and Louis assured her it was fine, apologizing for calling them out of the blue, thinking it might have frightened Will. What Louis couldn't see was Will tugging at Seline's shirt. His hand was trembling. She'd quickly excuse them and get Will to somewhere private. He was still shaking. He began crying, his mind filled with thoughts like, why only me? It's not fair. Hate. I won't forgive them. Don't abandon me. Seline held him close, figuring something must have triggered his trauma. She stayed with him all the way till evening until he finally felt better. She assumed he must have experienced unimaginable pain and promised from now on she'd be the one to erase all his painful memory. He squeezed her shirt, asking, does that mean we'll be together forever? She wondered if he was feeling anxious about the possibility of being left alone again because of his parents abandoning him. She understood how that felt and hugged him while saying, yes, we'll be together forever. Will became blissfully elated in a way she could never know she was feeding into. The next morning, while Jenna prepped Seline for the day, she complimented Celine's beautiful eyes, comparing them to amethyst stones. Seline was glad everyone was being so nice to her lately. She thought Adele's ice blue eyes were gorgeous too, and Prince Louis's eyes were a beautiful golden color. That's when Jenna would bring up that Prince Louis were special. Golden eyes were proof of royalty. Only those who come from royalty were born with golden eyes. Seline also really liked Will's black hair and eyes, because they made her feel nostalgic. They were of Asian color. She enjoyed another peaceful day of studies, hanging out with Adele and Will. She hoped days like this would last forever, but knew in the future there would be so much trouble between the two main characters. The character she had to keep an eye on was probably the second prince, aka the final boss. The second prince, born with a curse, was nearly killed by his own father, the king, under his orders during a young age. With the help of his nurse, he managed to escape. He lived a completely different life from the first prince, who was raised with love and care. Eventually, he tries to kill the royal family and Louis. She couldn't blame him though. It was only natural to hate people who treated him that way. But even if the second prince came to attack them, Louis's heroic powers and Adele's goddess powers should keep them safe. Seline knew she was the only one destined for death. She wondered what the curse coming from the second prince looked like, and if it was different from what Will suffered from. Little did she know, when Will was by himself, he was still suffering the pain of his curse, aching to the point of falling on the floor. In front of a mirror, Seline hit a pose, not knowing the head butler was right behind her. When he asked what she was doing, she got so embarrassed she was sweating. She just wanted to admire how much her physique looked. She quickly brightened, hearing she did look a lot slimmer. She's continued to exercise on her breaks between studying and practicing magic. She's also learned to eat less because of her diet decreasing her appetite. Because of her hard life in her previous one, she was very determined. She felt she had more weight to lose, being still quite bulky compared to her sister. I'm gonna be honest though, I think she looks fine. With her hosting a tea party, all the girls in attendance looked nervous. She was talking the other day about how she wanted to make friends, and her stepmother suggested they invite some young ladies of similar age to have a tea party. Unfortunately, the event was mostly awkward silence. Adele broke the ice by pointing out the sweets were delicious, trying to bring attention to the fact her sister wanted everyone to have a good time. A red-haired girl would suddenly ask Seline if she made up with Lady Adele, and Seline recognized her as Wilhelmina, daughter of Marquis Follet. With Wilhelmina bringing up the fact that Seline used to speak badly and make fun of Adele in front of everyone, Seline admitted she apologized to her sister and asked for forgiveness. Accepting that she used to be jealous, she promised from now on to take good care of Adele, and Adele forgave her, despite her terrible behavior. Wilhelmina smiled hearing this. Since Adele had forgiven Seline, she felt there was no problem. Life was about reflecting on your actions and starting over. This got the other girls to warm up to eating the snacks, and now everyone was finally able to have fun. By the end of it all, Seline thanked Wilhelmina for helping her out and asked her to be her friend. At dinner time, Celine's family cheered her on for all the good things happening in her life as of late. Her father brought up that her tutors said she was hardworking and quick to learn. This was the first time her father had ever praised her. She was so happy, she started crying. She promised to keep working hard. She would later find Will hard at work as well. For the past month, he's been helping the gardener from time to time. He presented a flower for her, and the gardener would tell her this was the first flower Will grew himself. He'd been working so hard to be able to give it to her. She gracefully accepted, promising to cherish it, and it made him happy. She felt so lucky. She's been reborn into a healthy body and was surrounded by the people she loved. She thought these happy days would continue in peace. Seline would stare at the flower Will gave her. It was the first gift she received from him, and she didn't want to let it wither, so she made sure a very expensive preservation spell was cast on it. He asked her if she'd be happier if he gave her more presents, and she answered sure. But what made her the happiest was seeing him living a healthy, happy life. His eyes widened hearing this. She asked what was wrong, and he just clung to her arm, replying, never mind. She felt like Will hadn't been his usual self lately. He always said he was fine, but hadn't been eating much. The other day, he resisted strongly when she tried to get him checked out by a doctor. She already decided she wouldn't force him to do anything, but felt maybe she should get a doctor to come by soon. During her magic studies, she'd learned Seline had quite the talent for magic, and thought it was a shame she didn't study hard when she was a character in the novel. Apparently, 30% of the world's population could control magic. The 4 basic elements were fire, water, wind, and earth, kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. But here, people could use multiple elements, and it was important to find which a person had an affinity for. Seline would try to use earth magic, but she didn't seem very compatible. She turned, and noticing a withering flower, she felt bad for it. She wondered if magic would be nutritious for its soil, and focusing, she restored it back to a healthy state. No, even more than that, it glowed brightly in a way even her tutor wasn't expecting. He quickly called an end to today's lesson, and later, she'd be called to her father's office. She was nervous, thinking she might be in trouble for some reason, never expecting her father to say he heard the goddess's power awakened inside of her. Healing a withered flower was a type of healing magic. She thought this had to be some kind of mistake, because it was Adele, the heroine, who alone possessed that power. She thought there's no way the villainous Seline could have it too. Duke Eldred commanded the tutor to bring out a stone tainted with black magic, and Celine's touch purified it completely. This was undoubtedly the goddess's power. No other magic could do what she just did. Her father thought this was a great honor, and she would be celebrated throughout the country. And for any normal person in this world, the occasion would be momentous. But for her, she was concerned this story was going to take a drastic change, especially hearing her father say she would definitely become the fiancée of Prince Louis. The goddess power was the most precious. There was no doubt the king would choose her to marry his son. But she was concerned, thinking about how that would ruin Louis and Adele being together. She didn't know what to do. She was in a daze thinking about the previous day. Last night, they hosted a celebration to rejoice the awakening of the goddess's power within her. She's never seen her father so happy before. The archbishop would be returning from overseas in 2 weeks, and he'd confirm her power. Once that happens, everything would really change for her. She wanted to put things off until Adele's goddess powers emerged, but then wondered if that would even happen at all. Will suddenly felt a thud in his heart, and she would ask what's wrong. He answered that he was just a little hungry, and with her telling him she'd get lunch ready, she had no idea what kind of pain he was experiencing. While having tea time with Louis and Adele, Seline would get constant unwanted praise from them for having goddess powers. Louis explained that it said an individual born of this country's noble blood, abundant in magical power, and possessing a beautiful heart loved by the goddess was the chosen one. And learning it was possible for multiple to be chosen, she felt relief, thinking her sister could still get goddess powers as well, just like in the novel. But by then, it might be too late, and Seline would already have been married to Louis. She was losing her head, while her sister and Louis just assumed she was overwhelmed by her new station in life. Adele decided to leave the two alone with the excuse of going to get Celine's favorite sweets. And in this time, Louis asked Seline if she wanted to go out with him next weekend. She responded yes, and that she'd ask Adele as well when she came back. But he made it clear he had no intention of inviting Adele. He wanted to go out alone with her. Adele would later cheer Seline on for getting asked out on a date. Seline didn't have any relationships with the opposite gender in her previous life. She never thought this would happen. She grabbed Adele, asking how she felt about Louis as a man. And Adele answered, nothing in particular. She wasn't interested in him at all. Seline was shocked. Adele and Louis should be in a relationship by now. Reality really was being altered, and she thought this was all her fault. With Adele telling her she wanted to choose her dress for next week's date, Seline sadly thanked her. Adele was just too cute despite this misfortune. At the Foray residence, Wilhelmina went, oh my, a secret date with His Highness? She could tell Seline didn't look so happy though. Seline would admit what she wanted was a normal marriage filled with love for one another, and Wilhelmina thought she was a lot cuter than she imagined. She understood most nobles married for political reasons, but some married for love, like Celine's father. The Duke's previous wife, Celine's mother, passed away right after giving birth to Seline. After that, he quickly fell in love with his current wife, a baron's daughter, and Adele was born. She understood why Seline became so cynical. Wilhelmina prayed that Seline would find that wonderful person she was hoping for, and asked to be the first one to hear about it when the time came. For Celine's date with the prince, they watched a popular opera, and now they were having a delicious meal at a fancy restaurant. Louis was an amazing gentleman, and thanks to his meticulous attention to detail, she was able to enjoy herself. He asked if she'd like some more bread, and she answered, no thanks, I'm on a diet. When he responded, you're cute the way you are though, she thought something was strange. That was the same thing Will said to her the other day, and for a second, she thought the two looked alike, even though they were completely different. Leaving the restaurant, Seline noticed a boy crying on the ground, and seeing he was in pain because of a scrape, she used her magic to heal him. The boy was amazed, asking how she did it, but she told him to keep it a secret. Watching her from behind, Louis was enamored by her goodwill. Returning home, Adele rushed to Seline, letting out that something was wrong with Will. Seline found him aching in pain as he laid in bed. The doctor explained he was already like this when he came to check on him. He could tell Will was holding in the curse's growth for quite a while now. Hearing there was nothing more they could do, Seline was getting desperate. A day passed. It was clear Will was deteriorating and he was in a lot of pain. She gave him holy water, but it didn't work at all. It was only a matter of time until he died. She was sure he was desperately trying to hide his pain, and she felt remorse for not noticing. Jenna entered the room, reminding Seline tomorrow was the day she was to go to the temple to get evaluated by the Archbishop. She was worried for Seline because she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Seline knew there was nothing she could do just sitting here, but she didn't want to leave Will alone. Jenna would then tell her she'd bring the books about temple preparation and a light meal here, so that way Seline wouldn't have to leave Will's side. How to greet people, how to walk inside the temple. There were a lot of detailed rules and etiquette required. In the book she was reading, Seline came across a part that discussed the power of the goddess. It was said the goddess saved the first king with her power. The king, who was cursed by the evil dragon, defeated the curse with the power of the goddess. This made Seline question if her powers affected curses as well. She grabbed onto Will's hand and prayed for his curse to disappear, as if it were a healing spell. Light began to emanate around it, and she felt her whole body hurting and getting hot. She could tell Will had been suffering so much, and she had to save him. Little by little, the curse weakened. Her thoughts of him flooded her mind. She just wanted him to be happy. The next morning, she woke up to her sisters and Jenna's teary eyes, trying to undo Will's curse. She went unconscious. She was relieved to hear his curse's symptoms had weakened, but Adele was upset at her for using her goddess powers till she went unconscious. Seline promised not to do it again. She was sorry for making her sister worry. Returning home from the temple, Seline's father was not happy. The Archbishop could see some remnant of the goddess's power within her, but barely any magic. She realized it was because she used up all her magic to treat Will yesterday. She didn't tell the bishop or her father that. Seeing Will sitting up, she ran to embrace him, but now saw his eyes were golden for some reason. She remembered Jenna saying golden eyes were proof of royalty. She thought they looked exactly like Louis, and asked him if he was the second prince. It made sense, since Will and the second prince were both cursed. But in the novel, Seline had nothing to do with the second prince. It hadn't crossed her mind that this could happen. They say magic was often stored in the eyes. Maybe his were black until now because of the curse. The reason why Will didn't seem to like Louis was because of the grudge he had against him. According to the novel, the second prince's life was truly tragic. Seline's heart ached just thinking about it. She apologized for not noticing what he'd been going through sooner. When she held him close, he apologized for not telling her, but she understood if they found out he was alive, they would have tried to kill him again. Wilfred Percival, he told her. That's my real name. That was his name in the novel as well. He asked if she didn't like him anymore, but she assured him she would always love him. She didn't care about his position or background. This was a great relief for him. He held her close, telling her, I like you, Seline. I love you. I want to be with you forever. And she reciprocated, telling him they'd always be together. She was going to always protect him and never let him live a life of revenge like in the novel. She told him for now to make sure he didn't show his eyes to anyone, but knew it wasn't something they could hide forever. During bedtime, while Will held the teddy Seline had given him, he was unable to sleep, only thinking about how he wanted to see her. He snuck out, and on his way, he overheard Jenna telling Adele Seline had used up all her goddess power that day to save him. Adele knew if her sister used all her power for a cursed orphan without permission, she'd be in big trouble, and it would be their father's responsibility. She was sad, thinking Seline was supposed to become queen and be loved by everyone in the country. Will felt terrible, taking the blame for causing the person he loved most so much trouble. He didn't want Seline to hate him. He wanted to become someone who was useful to her. He wanted Seline to love him, and remembered when she said, I'm waiting for my prince to appear, and it hit him. There was something only he could do for her. The next morning, when Seline entered his room, she saw him getting dressed by the maids. She didn't understand what was going on, or why he wasn't hiding his eyes. He calmly told her, I'm going to the castle. Seline's mind was going blank. As Will continued to explain he wanted to be prince, she tried to plead with him, saying it might be dangerous, but he had already made up his mind. The Duke entered, telling Seline it was all right and that Will wouldn't be returning for half a year. She didn't understand what was going on or why her father would be escorting Will back. All Will told her was he was sorry. After she calmed down, her father explained Prince Wilfred visited his room last night. He told him about how he was saved by her goddess power and that he wanted to live his life as second prince. At first, he was surprised, but seeing Wilfred's eyes, he knew the truth was undeniable. Seline bowed in remorse for lying to her father and the archbishop. He'd tell her to raise her head, understanding why she had to lie in that situation, and admitted he hadn't been the type of father she could open up to. She could see he probably had some guilt towards Seline. He then told her they'd have to keep her goddess powers a secret, because deceiving the archbishop was troublesome. That man possessed power equal to the kings within the temple. Seline was relieved her engagement to Louis wasn't happening. Now, if they sent Wilfred back right now, they might find out Celine's power cured him. So, the Duke decided they'd hide Will for 6 months, and after that, they could pretend the curse was broken naturally. Thinking about the short time they had, Seline assumed once Will went to the castle, he wouldn't be coming back here. She was worried she might not be able to see him often anymore. Things were happening that didn't happen in the novel. She didn't know what was going to happen to him. A week later, Louis would invite Seline to a private one-on-one meeting with him. He suddenly asked her why she was lying about not having goddess power. He saw the stone she purified, and also saw her heal the child's wound when they went out together. She tried lying about it, saying that day she just healed a small scratch, but Louis seemed unconvinced. She then asked him why he was angry, and he responded that he wasn't. But even she could tell the usually calm and gentle Louis seemed awfully tense today. Then he admitted he thought she lied because she didn't want to get engaged to him. She replied, of course not, and in fact, she thought he was a wonderful person. He was so kind to Seline, even when she was despicable. With him saying he was glad to hear it, his sparkling handsomeness was too bad for her heart. She was flabbergasted. He wanted to make her his fiancée. She couldn't believe this. She hadn't done anything to make him like her more. She asked why, and he told her she was cute. The way she smiled, he couldn't take his eyes off of her. He also admired how honest and hardworking she was. She got caught off guard. This was a better reason than she thought. She's never been told anything like this from a man, so she didn't know what to do. Either way, he was going to do his best to earn her affection. He smelled her hair, promising to see her again. 6 months later, they saw Will off. Seline started to cry because in the end, she couldn't prepare herself for this. He told her he loved her, and when he left, she kept thoughts of him being happy in her heart. While he looked back at her from the carriage window, he uttered, "I can't wait to make you all mine." A month later, Celine's father returned from accompanying Will. Will was doing fine, receiving extensive education and sword train. She asked when she'd be able to see him again, and he told her she wouldn't be seeing Prince Wilfred anymore. That sounded serious, but it was because Wilfred's existence was being kept secret until he became an adult. At 18, 6 years from now, Seline wondered if it was because they tried to kill him in the past, or because he hadn't been educated as a prince. Her father told her not to worry. They promised to take good care of Will. He assured her that the royals had circumstances they didn't understand. She brightened up a bit, hearing they were at least allowed to exchange letters. She began to write with the desire to keep Will happy. Later, while attending Wilhelmina's birthday party, she decided to get some fresh air. She came across Prince Louis on the balcony. She hadn't seen him since Will went away. The two observed the pretty lights of the city, and she learned he didn't see Will often either. Will's existence was hidden, even within the royal castle. She told him Will was like a cute little brother to her, and he uttered, "A brother, huh?" while thinking of the expression Will had on his face while seeing her. While having a tea with her sister, Seline would receive a letter from Will. It read, "Dear Seline, how are you? I'm doing well. I'm studying hard. I miss you. I think about you night and day. I love you." She thought he was so cute. She loved him so much. She could see his handwriting was getting better, and he was studying hard. She decided to do her best so she could be proud of herself the next time she saw him. During these next 6 years, she studied, practiced her magic, and exercised, all while exchanging letters with Will. Then the day would come when Jenna would tell her her carriage was ready to leave for the royal castle. Are you guys ready to see him post time skip? Well, you can't without liking the video and subscribing to my channel. A lot of male leads in manhwa seem to kind of be the obsessive type. Is that what you're into, my dear viewer? Luckily, I've got at least 8 more manhwa videos for you to check out once you finish this one. And if you finish all of those, you can find more stories in my completed series playlist. I promise it's got tons of incredible stories for you to listen to. So come on, hit that subscribe, I'll be your guy. Judging by Will's handwriting and the contents of his letters, Seline thought he was a lot smarter than she was now. Apparently, his swordsmanship skills and magic were better than anyone at his age. Now 19 years old, Seline had done a lot of studying and successfully lost weight, but also went through a period of regaining some as well. She got along with her family. Louis and Adele still hadn't fallen in love, despite her best efforts. As long as Adele was happy though, she didn't care, but would be sad if she never got to see the main couple from her favorite novel. It seemed more like Louis had feelings for her, and he didn't hide it from others anymore. Because of that, rumors of them getting engaged have spread throughout the social circle. He's grown so gorgeous, it was bad for her heart. Even then, she really didn't understand what love was. Also, her goddess powers have been getting stronger. She could finally control them perfectly now. Finally, the day has come when she could see him again. Will turned 18 last week. His debut party would be held at the castle soon. Arriving at the castle to meet with him, she was a bit tired. She was so excited the previous day, she hadn't slept at all. After dozing off, she woke up to someone calling her name, and when she realized it was Will, she suddenly squeezed him tightly. But getting a look at him up close, she was taken aback. She thought he was so handsome now. She started to back away, and he got sad, asking if he was different than what she imagined. But she told him no, she was just caught off guard by how dashing he'd become. He then asked if he'd become her ideal prince, and she didn't really know what that meant, but humored him, responding that he looked wonderful, and that really made him glow. He also had such a way with sweet words now. She really didn't know how to handle him. He felt like a total stranger in a way. The moment was interrupted by a maid bringing in their tea. Lucky for Seline, she needed time to calm her heart down. As the two conversed, he would tell her he was working hard, even at the cost of sleep, all because he had a goal, something he wanted with all his heart. Her letters really encouraged him. Seline was surprised. He's read them over hundreds of times. For the past year, there hasn't been a day where he hadn't thought of her. She was on his mind from morning to night. While she felt flattered, she also felt he must be lonely living here. She tried to assure him once he debuted, he'd be popular in no time, and that all the beautiful ladies would want him. But he told her, as long as she loved him, he didn't care about other women. She took this as his past experiences were probably making him afraid of people. This is going to be a recurring dynamic she has with him. The clock struck at 8, and Seline had to go home, but Will didn't want her to. He stared at her meekly, asking, "Hey, Seline, do you love me?" And she answered she did, and that she always would. As he nuzzled on her arm, she thought he was so cute. She was nervous coming here, but could tell he was the same boy as back then. Until he said, "But my love is different from yours." She didn't quite understand what he meant by that, but he was fine with it. He wanted her to stay the way she was. Giving her a light kiss on her head, he whispered he'd tell her, little by little. She pulled away, completely red, asking why he did that. And he reminded her she used to do that to him before he fell asleep. She thought this was totally different from back then. He asked if she didn't like it, and she'd go, it's not that I don't like it. So he told her, great, and they do it a lot from now on. He held her close again, and she thought this sense of personal space wasn't normal. Maybe being isolated from other people so long made him unsure of what normal was. She thought it was her duty to teach him. The next time they'd meet would be in a week at his debut party. She held his hand, telling him he deserved a peaceful and happy life from now on. Under his breath, he uttered, "Peaceful." It was ominous in a way. When she asked him if something was wrong, he shrugged it off with a smile. Leaving the castle, she was getting steamy just thinking about all the things Will had told her. She'd get stopped by Louis calling her name. He asked what brought her here, and she explained she went to see Will, not what he was expecting. He questioned why her face was fresh with blush, and she would only twiddle her fingers while looking away, saying, some things happen. Walking her to the gate, he asked her to come visit him next time too, since he was always visiting her. Not knowing Will was staring at them, anger and disgust written on his face. He thought, he's seriously a pain. Back at home, while Seline pleasantly discussed her time with Will to her family, a man was coughing up blood at the foot of Will. The man called Will a monster, and Will responded, "It'll take more than a few weaklings to kill this monster," while stomping on him. Will noticed more of this was happening lately, probably because his debut was getting closer. Thanks to Duke Eldred's support, he he's been treated with respect as the second prince, but his life has been targeted countless times. He knew it was the work of the queen, who didn't like his existence, and suspected his father, the king, approved of it as well. He managed to survive all this time because of the immense dark magic power from the curse. He thought it was ironic, considering it had once threatened his life. He was going to kill every last one of them. He'd never forgive the people who treated him badly, but didn't want Seline to see this dirty side of him. He didn't want to make her worry. He wanted her to love him. He was elated at the idea of giving her a peaceful and happy life. On the day of the party, Seline stared at her beautiful face in the mirror. She thought it was such a waste that the Seline in the novel stayed fat her whole life. Her heart pounded with joy and nervousness. The world would finally acknowledge Will as the second prince. In the novel, he tried to kill the king, Louis, and Adele, and was never recognized as the second prince until the very end. This was a completely different future from the one in Love of the Goddess. She was sure it'd be fine. Spotting him at the party, he was surrounded by ladies. It was only natural since he was so good looking. But even with a swarm of girls trying to talk to him, he only seemed to glow when he saw Seline. The two made very cordial greetings. She had to call him Prince Wilfred here. She couldn't act too familiar with him at this event. She walked away, telling him she'd see him later, and he'd reach towards her with a look of longing. Seline then saw her father chatting with the queen. She couldn't hear them, but the queen thanked him for giving her such a despicable gift. Seline had no idea they were suddenly talking smack to each other, but could tell the queen didn't seem to be happy with Will. While she had a face that resembled Louis, being his mother, it looked as if her personality was much different. Noticing Seline, the queen tried to make small talk with her, saying she's heard so much about her from her son, and wanted her to take good care of him. While it seemed the queen didn't hate her, Seline felt she should be a little careful. As the night continued, Seline would suddenly get pulled away. Will gestured her to stay quiet. He had to do this to talk to her, and told her he was so nervous out there, he was exhausted. She reasoned it made sense, with him being raised in isolation all his life. She praised him for working so hard with head pats. He would suddenly hold her close, resting his head on her shoulder, telling her, just a little bit, then I'll be able to do my duties again. She thought he's always been an affectionate softie. Having no idea, Louis was staring at them from the balcony across. He had a look of disdain, while Will smirked, as if saying he had won. Leaving the party for the night, a girl would bump into Seline. The girl apologized, and Seline was taken aback. Because this girl was so pretty, she looked like a doll. Seline thought there were so many beautiful people in the royal social circle, and while the girl thought Seline was beautiful as well, her maid would tell her that she was more beautiful. And the girl agreed, saying obviously no human was more beautiful than her. When she got married, she'd be a resident of this country. She couldn't wait to meet Prince Wilfred, her future fiancé. On another day, with Louis visiting the Eldred residence, Seline wasn't expecting to see him bring that same girl she had bumped into the night of Will's debut party. The girl introduced herself as Cordelia Dowswell, third daughter of Duke Dowswell of a neighboring country. Seline wondered why Louis brought her here. Turns out, Cordelia had just arrived in the kingdom and was complaining to Louis, her childhood friend, that she didn't have any friends here. And Louis told her he'd introduce her to someone wonderful. With Cordelia asking to be friends, Seline saw her as a cute, beautiful girl. But she wasn't expecting Cordelia to say she's come here as Prince Wilfred's fiancé. She didn't realize Will was at that age already. She wished he had told her about this. Cordelia gushed over Wilfred. She loved his cold expressions and mannerism, making Seline become quizzical. She had never seen Will acting cold before. Seeing the two off, Louis would tell Seline he didn't know how much longer he could wait for their engagement. He wanted to respect her feelings, but she was definitely the one he wanted. She didn't know what to do. At a later date, Will took his visit to the Eldred residence. He reminisced over his time living here, and thought Celine's room hadn't changed one bit. She mentioned being surprised to hear he was engaged, and when he learned what Louis had said about him and Cordelia, he got angry. He shoved her against where she was sitting, and told her it really pissed him off. He asked her why she thought he had willingly left to live at the royal castle, and she nervously answered she thought he wanted to redeem his position as prince. But no. That was just a means to an end. He wasn't interested in status or money. Touching her face, he told her, because I wanted you, because I wanted to make you all mine. Jenna and Adele have always told Seline she wasn't good at reading men's intentions, but Will made it very clear that his love for her wasn't family love or friendship. He looked weary, but joyful, she finally realized. He wanted to take his time to gradually explain, but couldn't, all because of Louis. Seline was stunned. This wasn't the Will she knew. She gripped her hands tightly, feeling a bit scared. Noticing this, he tried to comfort her. He didn't mean to make her sad. He always wanted her to smile. She was everything to him since he was a child. He loved her deeply as a woman. She was frantic, thinking about what to do. All this time, she didn't realize how he felt about her. She thought he was just fond of her as a big sister, but could now see he went back to the royal castle so he could return to being a prince worthy of her status. She apologized for being so insensitive towards his love he felt for 6 years, and towards his hard work, even though he's been lonely. She thought it was only natural he'd get angry if she mentioned his engagement to another woman. He, in turn, apologized for his jealousy earlier, but begged and asked to make sure she didn't like Louis. He was desperate for her not to get engaged to his brother. Desperate not to be abandoned. He wouldn't let that happen. He couldn't live without Seline. She felt responsible for finding him that day and changing his fate. She wanted him to be happy and to be by his side. Her love was different from his, but she did love him. He was important to her. She held him close, telling him not to worry because she'd never abandon him. And like a puppy dog, he happily stared and asked, really? Forever and ever? They were at a bit of an impasse though. Seline had obligations as the eldest daughter of a duke to do what was best for her family, meaning marrying the crown prince. Will had his duty as a prince to marry who his family assigned him to. He mumbled under his breath, wishing all the people who were superior to him would just go away. That way, nobody could stand in their way. Seline couldn't comprehend what he was implying. With him being alerted his ride was ready, he pulled Seline close to tell her he was serious. He'd do anything for a future with her, and from now on, he wanted her to think of him as a man. He gave her a light peck, and she pulled away, blushing. Back at his place, Will was greeted by Richard Starling, a marquis he met at the party the other day. They decided to join forces because they had the same objectives. Will didn't have enough power on his own yet. That's why he had to take advantage of everything he could. Richard was the chatty, over-familiar type, a little more than Will liked. The two would discuss Louis getting in Will's way. Richard saw Louis appeared, fresh-faced and innocent, but actually had been keeping Will locked up so he wouldn't get close to Seline. Louis was pretty obsessed with her. Will scoffed. He was grateful to Louis for warding off the pests that approached Seline in the years he couldn't leave the castle. But he didn't need him anymore. The men had their plans to destroy this country as soon as possible. Adele pointed out that her sister's been in a daze since Will's last visit. She told Seline not to worry, because if there was something on her mind, she'd do her best to help. Seline truly felt blessed to have such a kind sister. Adele suddenly asked if Will confessed his love to her. Seline couldn't believe she knew, but Adele thought anyone could tell from the way Will was acting the other day. Even their parents probably knew. Seline felt embarrassed that she was the only one who couldn't tell. 6 years ago, her mental age was 20, and Will was 12, so naturally, she felt strange thinking about him that way. But now that Will's grown up, she couldn't see that age difference anymore. At this point, Seline admired romantic feelings, but she intended to accept marriage for the sake of her family. No matter what though, she was going to stay by Will's side. She felt like he needed her right now. Not for the rest of his life, but perhaps just long enough so he could overcome his emotional instability from his difficult childhood. Things would take a difficult turn though, with Seline, Will, Louis, and Cordelia all having tea together. Cordelia fawned over Will being colder than usual. Seline was extremely uneasy, so uneasy, her whole body was cold. Louis would put his jacket over her to alleviate it, and while she accepted out of courtesy, she knew Will getting more angry would be the only result. All while Cordelia added more flames by calling Louis and Seline a lovely couple. It got so bad, Will dropped his teacup, and it shattered on the ground. Seline had no idea how she was going to overcome this nightmare blunt rotation of interactions. Will would reach for the glass and cut his hand, bleeding a lot. Cordelia shrieked, staring at it, and Seline rushed to his side, observing the deep wound. She couldn't use her goddess powers in front of everyone, and rushed out to treat him properly, not noticing Will's subtle smirk. Seline used her magic to heal him, and bandaged him up to make the full heal seem less suspicious. She thought over the whole event. She was invited to Cordelia's house for tea, but didn't know Will and Louis would be invited too. Will was only here because Cordelia told him Seline was coming. He didn't know Louis would be here as well. Looking at his bandaged hand, Cordelia thought that cut really must have hurt. But he told her it was okay, because seeing Louis touch her hurt a lot more. He decided to disinfect it by kissing her hand. and this got her burning up. She wondered where he learned to do this, thinking it wasn't good for him to be dependent on her forever, and that they needed to be considerate of Cordelia's feelings as well. She told Will they couldn't do this kind of thing anymore, and he asked, "Why? Do you not like me?" She grew anxious, telling him of course she liked him, and she was just doing this for him. She thought it'd be best to keep a normal distance between them, and he didn't take this well, asking what she meant by normal. He wanted only her. She was the only special person in his life. Seline got saved by a knock on the door, and Cordelia asking if they were all right. Returning, Cordelia brought up that next month, her engagement to Will would hopefully be confirmed. Will personally hadn't heard anything about that, while Cordelia claimed she heard it from the Queen. She turned towards Seline to ask if she'd celebrate with them, and oh boy, did things get awkward. Seline didn't know how to answer, but luckily, Louis would save her by saying her ride was arriving. Cordelia walked out with Seline to make small talk. She brought up how obvious it was Will adored Seline, but told her it was fine, since he belonged to her now. Cordelia promised to support Celine's little brother from now on, and hoped they could be good friends. Meanwhile, Seline was battling with a strange feeling in her heart, an ache in her chest, just thinking about Will and Cordelia being together. Back inside, Louis unraveled Will's bandage to confirm that his hand was fully healed. Will stormed off, thinking he needed to act fast or he'd lose Seline to Louis. While Louis thought of Seline as really foolish and cute, he wasn't going to let her get away from him, even if she tried to run away and hide. Seline would be informed by her father that she and him would be going to the castle next weekend, likely in regards to Prince Louis's engagement. She knew even though her father would respect her feelings, there was no way she could turn Louis down. Lately, she's been questioning if it was right to hide her goddess powers, because she could use them to save a lot of people. She might be able to save people who are suffering like Will, and if she married Louis, she wouldn't have to hide them anymore. Seeing how sad Seline looked, Adele decided to take her out for tea to cheer her up. They then strolled around the town and would spot Will. He immediately lit up, noticing Seline, and ran to give her a hug. She was glad to see he was his usual self. Richard scolded Will for leaving him so quickly, and quickly grabbed Celine's hand to introduce himself. He tried to give Celine's hand a kiss, but Will would slap it away, while Adele would get defensive over her sister. With Seline introducing herself and her sister, Richard did his best to butter them up, complimenting the sisters for being even more beautiful than the rumors said. Richard and Will were good friends, as claimed by Richard. Seline got so happy to hear Will finally made a friend. Will told Richard that was enough, and Seline thought it was so cute to see him blushing. The four of them had lunch. We're hearing that while Richard was popular with women, Lady Adele was totally his type. She seemed indifferent towards him though. Will then told Seline to open wide as he tried to feed her, and she thought this wasn't right. Her engagement with Louis was impending, but she didn't want to ruin the mood right now, and Will's face was so cute, so she took a bite. Outside, Will told Adele he needed to do something and asked her to come with him. Another happy moment for Seline. This was the first time Will invited Adele to do anything for him. After some time, Seline and Richard would stumble on a crowd. There was an accident. Seline had a bad feeling and rushed in to see Will on the ground with blood all over him. She was horrified, but what happened next really shocked her. Adele was glowing with light as she healed him with goddess magic. Seline rushed to Will's side, observing his wounds disappearing. Once Will was fully healed, Adele fell over, but Richard caught her. Watching Will get up, Seline scrambled to embrace him. He was still faint from the blood loss, and now the surrounding bystanders were talking amongst themselves about how he was healed despite the terrible injury. So they took their leave. 2 days later, Will visited Seline and explained he had gotten in a carriage accident that day. Seline was so scared for him, she had no idea how lost he was holding her in his arms. The two discussed how surprising it was that Adele manifested her goddess powers, and how Will remembered Celine's saying that she would someday. She couldn't believe he remembered since she had said it so long ago. Prior to this, still recovering, Adele was quite surprised that she even possessed goddess power. She just had a strong desire to save Will, and a light suddenly came out of her hand. Seline figured the desire to save something must be the trigger for the powers to manifest. Their father was at the royal castle at the moment, since news of Adele's newfound power had spread quickly. The king summoned him pretty much immediately following the incident. Will saw Adele at the castle right before he had left to come here. He assumed she was probably getting recommended to marry Louis right now. Seline felt bad, because unlike in the novel, the two of them didn't love each other. However, Will told her not to worry, assuring her Louis would probably stop that from happening. This was still good for Will though, because it was still going to buy him time. Will was sure his engagement plans would be cancelled as well, and now there wouldn't be any obstacles between him and Seline. She gave a look of concern, questioning if it was really possible for a decision made by the queen to be called off so easily, and she also felt guilty for the ache in her chest. When Cordelia told her she'd take care of Will, he grasped her hand and held her close, telling her, "I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you," and that he didn't need anyone else. He'd be fulfilled. She thought he was really cute, but wondered why she couldn't get rid of this unease. Chatting with Richard back at his place, Will continued to dote over how adorable Seline was. Richard thought Will was really something else. He could have died in that accident, but Will believed he was never in any danger. Even in the case that Adele didn't manifest her powers, he knew Seline would have rushed to his side. Richard wondered what would have happened if Seline knew he had planned the whole thing. Will planned everything. After reading books in the royal archives and researching the power of the goddess, he learned the trigger that awakened the power was the desire to save others. That's why he needed a life-threatening situation. All this over something Seline mentioned to him as a child. He knew she was special. There were many times where she predicted the future accurately. Now that Adele manifested her goddess power, the royal family would surely want her as a potential candidate for the crown prince's fiancé. Will himself had no qualms experiencing near death. He went through a lot more painful things in the past. He'd do whatever it takes to get Seline. His next task was to deal with his engagement to Cordelia. Richard pointed out Will was awfully suspicious of her, but Will knew more than anyone that he and her were similar types of people. Richard didn't seem to mind that too much, going, anyways. Then quickly asking for Will's support after this whole thing, because he wanted his shot with Lady Adele. At night, where Louis was drinking by himself, Cordelia could tell he had a lot on his plate. The two knew something was strange about Adele's newly manifested powers. Louis firstly couldn't imagine Wilfred getting involved in a carriage accident in the first place. His mother had whined about Will eliminating all the assassins she sent himself. She thought he was so creepy and wished he would just die already. He thought back to when Seline learned more than one person could manifest goddess powers and grew anxious, remembering the relieved look on her face. But then thought maybe he was overthinking. It's been said since ancient times that with the power of the goddess, the country is safe. He was sure his family would do whatever it takes to have Adele. But he only wanted Seline. He didn't know why. It wasn't logical, but wanted her to only smile at him. Cordelia, meanwhile, gushed over Will's coldness and the fact he killed with no hesitation. Louis didn't understand what she possibly saw in him, but for her, it was the first time she met someone like her. Adele and Louis would explain to Seline that despite the fact the queen wanted Adele with Louis, it seemed as if he intended to oppose his parents head-on. Seline was surprised to just hear Adele say it plainly. Louis was willing to put himself in a bad position solely because he wanted her. Seline would shift the conversation to talking about the royal family's annual hunting tournament. While the men were hunting, the women relaxed and enjoyed their tea in the tents. The men, of course, offered their prey to the women they liked. The woman who gets the best prey becomes the queen of the hunting tournament that year. Ladies, does that sound appealing? I'm curious. Last year, Louis caught the best prey and offered it to Seline, so she reluctantly became queen. In the novel, Will takes advantage of the hunting tournament and tries to kill Louis. This was an event where Adele would use her goddess power to cure him. Seline hoped that wouldn't happen this time. There were way more people compared to last year, especially women. They had a particular interest in the fact the two princes were participating this year. Adele was getting the most attention by far, though. A few days prior to this, the Archbishop officially recognized her goddess power, and from now on, she learned to use her power for the good of the country. Seline got surprised, with Cordelia calling out to her, and while Cordelia sounded bright and cheery, Seline was racked with guilt, especially wondering if Will would offer his prey to her when the two princes made their entrance. The women swarmed them. Will was just as popular as Louis. Cordelia ran up to Will, squeezing his arm as she told him how much she missed him. Seline became distraught. She wondered if it was true that they were getting engaged. She thought they did look good together, and wondered why her chest was hurting so much. Louis would suddenly approach them, taking Celine's hand. He promised to do his best to make her his queen this year, declaring his feelings and their future would not change. It pained her that she couldn't return his feelings, despite how sweet he was towards her. And when Will would take a private walk with her, holding her close, she couldn't understand why her heart was racing more than before. He couldn't help but want more. This wasn't enough for him anymore. He wanted to be with her more, touch her more, and as he pulled his lips towards her, she squeezed her eyelids, and he stopped to tell her, just kidding, and began leading her back to the event. She felt so strange, like her heart was going to explode. The two had no idea. Cordelia was watching, going, "I warned you, Lady Seline. I have to punish bad girls who steal from their friends," with her assassins standing behind her. Coming back, Adele thought Seline had a fever. Seline stumbled through her words and couldn't believe Adele figured out her chest hurt when she saw Cordelia hugging Will. Before Adele could explain what we all know that feeling meant, Cordelia cut in to invite them for tea. During their tea, a woman approached Seline, saying she had something important to discuss with her regarding Prince Wilfred. Seline would take the bait, while Cordelia was silently chuckling. This would result in Seline waking up in the middle of the woods. Recalling what happened earlier, she had gotten knocked out from behind when conversing with that woman. Seline thought this discussion might have involved Will's past, so she told her bodyguards not to follow. She didn't know things would turn out like this. She got startled by some rustling in the bushes behind her, and stared in horror, with hooded men coming her way. One of them shot an arrow past her, grazing her cheek with a bleeding scratch. She didn't know why this was happening, but she knew she had to run. She didn't know who was behind this. There was nothing like this in the novel either. She stumbled onto the ground as the arrow landed right next to her, and she wondered if he missed on purpose. It was like they were playing with her, as though they were hunting. She was terrified. She could use a number of spells, but they weren't suited for combat. Healing her wounds, she'd run out of energy eventually. She eventually stumbled again, huffing out of breath as they caught up to her. It was no use. She couldn't run anymore. The men talked about how they were ready to kill her now. They thought it was such a shame, since they didn't see women as beautiful as her this often. They didn't want to fail their mission, and came up with the idea to kill her first, then have fun with her after. In her past life, she didn't care if she died. No one would be sad if she died. But now, there were people who cared about her, people she loved. She didn't want to die yet. She prayed desperately with tears for Will to save her, and that's when he appeared in front of her, staring viciously at her attackers. He was actually surprised to see her so scared. He apologized for taking so long, and promised everything would be alright. She told him they needed to escape, but he'd say there was no need, because he'd take care of them quickly. Hearing one of them say they were going to kill her and have some fun, Will became furious, dauntingly fierce, in a way Seline had never seen him before. Then said, "I'll kill you," and used his dark magic to roast them with immense feelings of pain. Seline could feel his cold, negative energy. As one of them came crawling to his feet, groaning that he couldn't breathe, Will told them that's what he gets, and that he was going to make them suffer more than death, and then kill them. But decided to kill this man first, since he was a bit too noisy, and some of his blood splattered onto Seline's face. She was at a loss, seeing her sweet Will had just killed a man. Will made the rest suffer more and more under the might of his magic, and he was really enjoying himself. Seline couldn't believe this. He seemed just like the brutal second prince in the novel. He turned towards her with a smile, apologizing because he got so angry he couldn't control himself. She felt a chill as he told her he was going to kill the rest now, and she squeezed at his pants, begging him not to. He asked why, since they had just tried to kill her, and quickly took it as she probably meant they had to keep at least one of them alive to find out who hired them. So now he was going to kill one and bring the other back with him. She thought all this time things were different from the novel. She just assumed Will didn't have any desire for revenge, but could now see there was no way he could forget all the pain he's been through. She felt so insensitive for telling him he deserved to live a peaceful and happy life, seeing now people were always after him. She got up, and seeing the man he cut apart, she steeled herself and healed him right away. Will couldn't understand why she was doing this, knowing what they were trying to do to her, and she told him she was really scared, and she'd never forgive them, but they deserved to be punished in accordance with their country's laws. She didn't want Will to kill people. She suddenly held him and thanked him for saving her, and he embraced her back. While she was still scared and felt like she was going to burst out crying, no matter what, she wasn't going to let Will follow the novel's script. She was going to make him happy. 2 weeks passed. The assailants were handed over to the military police brigade. They were unfortunately restrained with magic from speaking about who they'd been hired by, so the culprit was still unknown. The attempted murder of the Duke's daughter was a big deal, so the hunting tournament was called off. Seline's father forbade her from going outside or with visitors, until Will came by. He seemed depressed, asking if she hated him now. She asked why he would think that, and turns out she didn't look at him again after the incident, and the weekly letters she usually sent had stopped. She was in a daze the last 2 weeks, and didn't notice Will's letter amongst the many she'd been receiving for sympathy. She could see he looked sad like an abandoned child, and told him she was sorry and he was glad, because he'd die if he lost her love. He brought up how she didn't like him killing people and promised to be more careful from now on, but also wanted her to know there were some situations where it was kill or be killed. She was shook, realizing he'd been referring to his life at the castle, and wondered if killing for him was an act of self-defense in a lot of cases. She promised she'd never hate him, but begged him to not do anything dangerous. She knew she didn't have the power to protect him, but wanted to support him in any way she could. He admitted to having been in life-threatening situations since leaving the Duke's residence as a child. They poisoned him, servants who got close to him betrayed him, but he didn't want her to worry, so he kept quiet. But as long as he had her, he was happy. He didn't care about other people, and now he wanted something more certain than Seline's support. He wanted them to get engaged. Her jaw dropped, hearing he wanted to stay by her side as his fiancée. When she asked about Cordelia, he told her she was merely a stranger who the queen arranged, and that Cordelia was probably the person who tried to kill her. Seline didn't want to believe this, but Will promised he'd find proof soon enough. He was also certain Cordelia didn't feel anything romantic for him. He didn't like or trust anyone but Seline. Then posed the idea that if he avoided an engagement to Cordelia, would that make her comfortable staying by his side? Seline's reflexive step back made him sad. He then said, "So, you were lying when you said you'd do anything for me. It's okay. I'm sorry for asking for too much. I know you don't love me the way I do. I'll go now." Ooh, classic emotional manipulation. She told him to wait. Her thoughts were scrambling. She questioned if it was in his best interest to half-heartedly hold him back, because what he wanted from her wasn't the same relationship as before. It was clear he wanted them together as husband and wife for the rest of their lives. She wanted to stay by his side, but she wasn't ready to go that far, but also felt like if she let him go now, he'd disappear forever. So she told him directly that she'd get engaged to him. That wasn't enough for Will, though. He told her to kiss him. That was the only way for her to prove how serious she was. She immediately began to blush. She understood what he was trying to say, but she's never kissed anyone before. That was something people who were in love did. She felt strangely embarrassed, but not repelled by the idea. Now that she agreed to getting engaged, there was no turning back. Seeing how determined she looked, Will started laughing. He closed his eyes so she could kiss him, and staring at him in this brief moment, she thought he really did have a beautiful face. She drew herself close for a kiss, and pulling back, she felt like her heart was going to explode. He then suddenly grabbed her back and kissed her fully. She asked why, and he told her he couldn't help it. He thanked her because now he was so happy. He wanted them to be together forever, and he'd always treasure her. She turned her face, and he thought it was so cute her heart was beating fast because of him. Later, while Will was torturing a man, Richard thought he sure looked happy today. Learning Seline said she would get engaged to Will, Richard knew it. Will probably threatened her into doing it. The more Will thought about it, the more he felt sad internally. It definitely wasn't mutual. He just took advantage of her kindness. He used a forceful tactic because he was afraid she'd get rid of him. The time he killed in front of her was the first time Seline gave him such a fearful look. It made him realize he was indeed crazy. She looked at him like he was an alien. The thought of her hating him was scarier than death, because if he couldn't be by her side, he wouldn't be able to live anymore. He took advantage of her sympathy, even though he had no intention of leaving. Not many people knew this, but constraint magic wasn't almighty. There was a brief moment of unraveling just before one died. Will found this out by accident while torturing assassins in the past. He got the tortured man to say the culprit was a woman from a neighboring country with black hair and gray eyes. Will knew exactly who that was. He called her a bitch before killing the man in cold blood. Even though the man's words weren't enough evidence, Will was satisfied. He couldn't believe the audacity Cordelia and her partner in crime had making a move on his Seline. He was going to kill them himself. A week passed since Seline agreed she'd get engaged to Will, and he was more affectionate to her than ever. She saw him differently now. The way he touched her made him feel more mature. Trying to go for another kiss, she asked him to stop. They weren't officially engaged yet, and she thought it wasn't a good idea. She told him they needed to do things in the right order. But really, that was just an excuse because she was really embarrassed. He would accept only if she gave him one more kiss. Then he'd be a good boy. She gave in, and he ended up getting 2 kisses and going for his third, telling her they were still in the middle of just one. She got a little pouty, but he assured her it was only one, even knowing he was being bad. He then brought up that once they got engaged, then they could kiss a lot. She got embarrassed as he stared at her with feelings of endearment. After being cooped up in the house for so long, Seline felt bad for gaining 11 pounds. And Will told her she didn't have to go on a diet. He'd love her no matter what she looked like. He loved how she looked when they first met. He thought she was so adorable and would love her even if she lost her arms and legs or her face got crushed. Man, these examples are oddly specific. He'd make it evident that if anything, he didn't want her to get too beautiful because other men would get attracted to her. She thought he was sweet. Later, Seline was surprised Will was able to convince her father to let them go for an outing in the capital. The trip would happen in a week's time. And surprisingly, Will invited Adele as well. Seline was looking forward to it. She'd find Adele in the hallway with Louis standing behind her. She invited him over because the king and queen wanted the two of them to talk. As expected, they haven't given up on Adele and Louis getting married. Seline thought this was perfect time and asked Louis to speak with her privately. In a room, she told him she was honored he chose her as his fiancée, but broke the news she couldn't reciprocate his feelings. He asked why, and she told him she wanted to be by Will's side. Louis scoffed, replying back, "Do you think that will make you happy?" He liked how kind and considerate Seline was, but saw this as nothing more than self-sacrifice. Mistaking love for sympathy, she tried to object, but she'd stop, as he asked if she really loved Wilfred as a man. He reminded her it was her dream to marry the person she loved, and laughed, as he told her staying with Will would only make her unhappy as time went on. He could tell Will took advantage of her kindness, and took advantage of her, but he himself also looked desperate right now. More than anything, he thought of Will as cruel, violent, and dangerous. He warned her to keep her distance from him, because what if someday Will laid his hands on her precious family? Seline knew that in the novel, Will tried to kill Adele, and was conflicted on whether or not he'd turn into the man the novel wrote him to be. She decided to fight that fate, because Will's happiness was more important to her than her own. With her telling Louis she wasn't going back on her decision to be with Will, he replied, "You poor thing, don't worry. I'll help you realize." He got on one knee and told her he loved her, that he's always thought of her only. There was a knock at the door, luckily getting Seline out of this moment, but Louis would grab her from behind. Hearing it was Will on the other side, she got scared. She didn't want him to see her in this position. Louis whispered in her ear, telling her to send Will away. She made an excuse that she fell asleep and would be out right away. She just needed to get dressed. Louis felt he had won with Will buying that. Seline turned angrily towards Louis, telling him to never do that again. He then hit her with a revelation with how strange it was Will couldn't avoid a carriage accident. He knew Will had gone to the royal archives at some point to learn about goddess powers, and believed he planned the whole thing to awaken Adele's to remove Seline as a candidate for his fiancé. Seline couldn't believe this. She saw how badly Will was injured, and tried to assure herself Louis was just overthinking, and that had to be a coincidence. Louis called it an end for the day, and told her not to worry about seeing him out, because he'd be back for her. Afterwards, she'd go to Will and Adele, who were discussing next week's trip. Adele wondered if it was alright for her to go with them, since it was their first trip together after becoming a couple. This was news to Seline. She hadn't announced them getting together yet, but Will would ask if she'd let herself kiss a guy she wasn't in a relationship with. She'd suddenly cover his mouth, telling him not to say things like that in front of Adele. But Adele told him it was okay. She didn't hear anyway, while covering her face instead of her ears. Will used this moment to lightly bite Celine's hand, and he'd lean in close to ask, "Are you my girlfriend or not?" She gathered enough strength to squeak out a yes. Elsewhere, Cordelia was bored after another murder session. Louis knocked at her door, asking to chat, and she told him she'd join him soon in his room. She was going to have her maid clean up everything first. Cordelia was especially bored because Wilfred didn't pay attention to her at all. Killing wasn't worth anything to her if it wasn't for someone she liked. During the carriage ride for the trip, Adele wasn't too happy with Richard talking non-stop. Their destination was Marquis Starling's domain, which Richard owned, of course. Being relatively close to the royal capital, they'd arrive in 2 days. Seline now figured that was why Will invited Adele. Richard seemed to really like her. Richard was trying to lay it on her, asking if it was a bother to have invited her after all. But she didn't mind, and told him he should have just said so in the first place. She was thankful he carried her after she passed out. That was enough for him to say he'd invite her to fair and square dates up front. Arriving at the domain, it was absolutely beautiful. Seline never had a chance to travel far, not in her previous life, as well as after being reincarnated as Seline. When she asked to introduce herself to Richard's parents, He told her he didn't have any, so there was no need for that. She didn't know what that was about. Will could tell what Richard said worried Seline. Richard was always so cheerful, so she never imagined that he had no family. Even worse, when Will explained that Richard's parents were killed by the king, everyone thought it was an accident. But they were killed because they had learned of the king's crime. Will didn't want to tell them anymore, or else the girls would have targets on their backs as well. He warned them to be careful around the king and queen. At the end of the day, Adele expressed her worry about Richard to her sister. She was really thinking about all the time he spent alone in both the capital and in his domain. It definitely explained how he became a marquis at the age of 21. Losing his parents, he had to inherit the title. They got a knock on the door, and with it being Will, Adele suddenly felt like she had to go to bed. Of course, to leave Seline and Will alone. Hoo-hoo. Seline was worried about what might happen. He sat next to her on bedside, asking if she was sleepy yet. He was happy to have spent the whole day with her. She tried to make an excuse to go to bed, but he didn't want her to leave yet. She thought he was being cute at first, and still acting childish. That's when he'd hit her with, "Let's sleep together." She definitely wasn't ready for that. Flustered, she tried telling him no, so he asked why. Since they used to sleep together all the time. Once they went back to the capital, they wouldn't be able to spend time like this. And ever since he left the Duke's house, he's been scared and lonely at night. This made her think of lonely 12-year-old Will, and she gave in, saying it was all right that they slept together. He was warm and endearing when embracing her, but his smirk was wicked and devious. He suddenly snuggled her from behind, saying, "Good night, Seline." He wanted them to sleep together like this every night during the trip. Her heart was racing like crazy, and she thought there was no way she could survive a week of this. But she'd soon pass out like a baby. When Will left the room, Richard went, "You pervert, what were you doing in there?" Trying his usual playful banter. Will was going back to the castle. It was tough on his body, since teleportation spells consumed a lot of energy. But he'd be back in the morning. Placing his hand over the crystal ball, Will arrived back home. Teleportation tools were precious, and there were only a handful of them on the continent. They required so much magical energy, most people couldn't even use them. As the second prince, Will had a lot of work to do, most being small jobs Louis didn't want to do. There were even jobs that required him to participate in expeditions to defeat demons, which usually wasn't expected of a prince. Looking at his pocket watch, he realized he'd be able to sleep for at least an hour today. But looking at the teddy bear Seline had given him as a child, it was worth it for him to do it all for the sake of their future together. The next day during breakfast, Richard mentioned Will and Seline were sleeping together, and this got Adele so flustered. Seline tried to say, "No, we were just lying on the same bed." Guys, isn't that the same thing? Seline then brought up that he wasn't even there when she woke up, and he smiled at her, saying he just went for a little walk. The gang then decided to stroll around town, and Richard suggested they split up, because he wanted his date with Lady Adele. She tried to object at first, but with him saying they probably shouldn't get in the way of the new couple, she thought he was right. Seline and Will would go shopping, and she bought him some new earrings he promised to cherish forever. By nighttime, he'd return to the royal castle, where Louis would ask about his time with Seline. Will answered that it was none of his business, but Louis would suddenly tell Will he couldn't tie down Seline with sympathy forever. Will's eyes would widen, hearing Louis was with her that day she had fell asleep in her room, and that she wanted to stay with him. Louis continued to taunt his brother with the fact he was hugging her from behind the door, that her bashful face was so cute. Will snapped and threatened to kill Louis. He brandished his dark magic aura, while Louis was prepared to duel, deflecting the magic with his own. Will knew he could kill Louis in an instant, but withdrew, thinking about how that might affect Seline. This was a surprise to Louis. Will's last words for this interaction would be, "One day, I'll kill you," before he took off. Seline woke up to Will crying, his teardrops falling on her face. She asked what was wrong, and he called her a cruel liar. He brought up that she sent him away so she could be with Louis, and she wondered how he could possibly know that. He questioned if it was a lie when she told him she wanted to be with him forever, but she promised she was serious. He then asked if it was true. Louis hugged her, and as she tried to explain, he kept saying, "No, no, no! You're going to marry me, so why did you betray me? Answer me!" She blamed herself for not telling the truth that day. He then questioned if Louis begged for a kiss, would she give him one too? He was going crazy from all the hatred, sadness, and pain. Her heart was squeezing, and then he suddenly told her to kiss him to make him feel better. She knew this definitely wasn't right, but she did it anyway. She didn't know if this was right, but she still wanted to do whatever it takes to make him happy. As they embraced, he told her not to let a man touch her ever again, before holding her down for another kiss. It was already noon, and Adele was worried because Seline and Will hadn't left their room. She heard them arguing all night. When Will came out, Richard asked where Seline was. Will told them not to worry. They'd be together for a while longer, but didn't want them to bother them. Seline had a lot on her mind. Like, why did Louis tell Will about that day? And how did they communicate with each other since Louis was in the capital? She's never seen Will cry like that. He came back in and asked if she was okay, then asked if she hated him, just like he'd done many times before. She told him of course not, and apologized again, swearing she wouldn't hide anything from him anymore. At first, she did want to save him out of pity, because his situation had overlap with her past, where she suffered from illness and died alone. But as time went on, she was happy to see him open up to her little by little. She loved that he was only attached to her. It was cute how he was so straightforward and told her he loved her. Maybe somewhere inside, she's always wanted to be someone's number one. Maybe it wasn't just that he was dependent on her. Maybe she was just as dependent on him. When they got back to the capital, Seline wanted to find out what Louis was really up to. She didn't want him hurting Will anymore. On their last night of vacation, Will expressed to Richard that his first order of business returning would be to take care of Cordelia. After, the king and queen. And then finally, he'd kill Louis. He knew killing Cordelia wouldn't make Seline feel any safer. He needed to make Seline realize Cordelia was the culprit. He knew Cordelia was the type who enjoyed killing. There was a dead body of a servant recently found in the castle. He was sure it was her doing. Seline was flashing the new bracelet Adele got for her. Adele couldn't get all the thanks though. It was Richard who helped her pick it out. She blushed, just uttering his name. The two went out together during the day Seline was holed up in her room with Will, and that's when they got Celine's gift. Seline complimented Adele's earrings, and Adele went shy again, mentioning Richard gave them to her. This was the first time Adele wore something a man had given her. He told her it was the first time he's ever fallen in love with someone. Apparently, Richard fell in love with her at first sight, but the more he learned about her, the more he fell in love with her. Now he really wanted them to get married. Aww, guys, this is so sweet. Seline had no idea things got so far between the two. As an older sister, she wanted to give good advice, but couldn't because of her lack of romantic experience. Adele was worried Richard was just teasing, but Seline could tell she definitely cared about him. She felt like she's never seen Adele like this. Maybe this might be her first love too. Richard didn't even appear in the original novel. Adele felt so positive after her talk with Seline, she decided to accept his invite to dinner next week. Seline would receive Wilhelmina after a letter request from her. It had been 3 years since the two had last seen each other, because Wilhelmina was studying abroad. Wilhelmina asked if Seline had fallen in love yet, and while she hadn't, Seline admitted to promising engagement to someone she really cared about. After learning it was Wilfred, Wilhelmina checked the room to make sure no one was listening, and whispered to Seline to be careful of Cordelia. She heard a lot about her while she was studying in the neighboring country. Everyone who got close to her has been found dead. In a secluded log cabin, Cordelia was surprised Wilfred invited her. She wondered what he was going to do to her in the middle of a forest. Hugging him from behind, she teased, saying, "It's just you and me in this deserted forest. I'm so nervous." He plainly mentioned she was the one who tried to kill Seline in this forest, making her sigh. She couldn't believe he was talking about another woman at a time like this. She thought Seline looked so cute that day, and that it was a shame he got in the way. This earned a scary glare from him, but Cordelia loved it. That's when he'd point his blade at her neck. We turned back to Wilhelmina saying all Cordelia's close friends had been cut up, like they'd been played with. This put fear in Celine's heart. She wondered if Will was alright. She'd visit the royal castle, unannounced, to get told that Will wasn't available. She knew it was rude to visit the royal family without making an appointment, but she couldn't stop feeling uneasy, so she snuck out of her house without permission. She'd be stopped by Louis. She hadn't seen him since that day he grabbed her from behind. She'd been wanting to talk to him and thought this was the perfect time. When she asked why he told Will what happened that day, Louis seemed somewhat sarcastic, saying, "Should I not have told him?" Just like she thought. Louis knew Will would get hurt, so he deliberately told him. In the novel, Louis wasn't the kind of person who would do something like this. He was the purest, most honest and sincere person. She wondered if he changed because of Will, or was it because he fell in love with her instead of Adele? a maid came screaming to them, shouting something had happened to Prince Wilfred. They found a blade driven in his chest, with Cordelia's hands on it, her now eyeing them. Pulling it out, she laughed, saying, "You found me." Back in the secluded cabin, Cordelia said the obvious. Will would lose everything if he killed her at that moment, and his darling Seline would be so sad. That's when he turned it against her, saying, "When did I say I was going to kill you? I want you to disappear from my and Celine's life." He handed her the blade wrapped in dark magic, and she didn't understand. Her hands were moving on their own. He smirked as it drove her to stab him. His blood splattered, and he revealed a crystal ball that would take them back to the castle, where she ended up in a room where a maid was. He knew she'd be arrested with the attempted murder of royalty. Her life was done. He had evidence of some of her past murders, too. This made her burst out into laughter. She really loved Wilfred. She couldn't believe she fell for it so easily. She was wary of being killed by him, but she never thought she'd be the one to kill him. It wasn't just because he didn't want her as his fiancée. He needed Seline to feel safe by finding out who tried to kill her. On top of the fact, she loved him the more pitiful he was. Cordelia thought he was crazy, just like her. Normal people were happy when they saw the smile of the person they loved. For her, she felt happy when she saw them suffering. That's why she killed so many people. One thing Will didn't count on was Seline being here, and another was that Cordelia was going to let him leave alive. She quickly casted a binding magic that prevented him from moving. Normally, he'd be able to handle this, but because of the long-distance teleportation consuming so much of his power, and also the blood he's lost, he was at his end because of Cordelia's love. Seline reached out, creating a barrier that knocked Cordelia away. Louis was surprised. This was a barrier made by the goddess's power. Seline rushed to Will's side as Cordelia was taken away by the castle guards. She wanted to heal him, but he told her not to. He didn't want people to find out about her powers. She tried to heal him regardless, but he shrugged her off. For him, being with her was more important. Adele was able to treat him shortly after, and he survived. But Seline still regretted not being able to save him with her own strength. Returning home, she thought about how bad she would feel if Will had died. It was times like these that made her realize how much he meant to her. It was her goddess power that saved him from Cordelia. She hadn't been taught how to handle magic like Adele had, because she's been keeping her true powers hidden. She wished she had the power to protect Will and the other people around her in confidence. But if her power becomes known to the world, the problem with getting engaged to Louis would resurface. She wanted a way to use her goddess power and still be with Will. She visited Will after he rested. They hugged things out. Then she suddenly hit him with, "Let's get married." He wasn't expecting that. While engagement was easy to call off in this country, royalty and high nobility were not allowed to get divorced. Once she married Will, her problems with Louis would be solved, and she wouldn't need to hide her goddess power. And if people found out that she, as the eldest daughter of Duke Eldred, had strong powers, that would likely change their impression of Will for the better. She even got her father's approval, but Will told her no. He didn't want to marry her like this. Richard came back with what Will had asked for. Worst timing in the world. Seline got up, apologizing for rambling. Will tried to tell her it wasn't what she was thinking, but as she smiled, telling him she'd come visit again, the pain was visible on her face. When Richard learned what happened, he was taken aback. Will admitted he was so scared. His heart couldn't keep up. Richard could tell Will cared about Seline a lot, and that he was worried she would choose to sacrifice herself to stay with him. He kinda thought it was cute Will still had some human in him, and that maybe he was maturing. He promised to help him out. Seline lied in her bed, sulking over Will's rejection. She wondered why this happened, since he always said he loved her so much. She felt ashamed for thinking he'd definitely accept her. It was so sad and painful. She never thought his love would waver, and was terrified of his love diminishing even the slightest bit. Richard barged in her room, saying, "Good afternoon, sister-in-law." So Adele felt compelled to give him a little slap. He'd suddenly tell Seline he found a good woman to be Wilfred's wife. Things were going from bad to worse for Seline. The girl claimed to understand the relationship between Seline and Will, and didn't mind the two of them having a family-like relationship from now on. Knowing Seline could still remain familiar with Will, she questioned why she wasn't happy. It was perfect for Will, and they could go back to how they were before. She finally understood. She's always loved Will, but now her feelings were different. She told Richard she didn't want to be Will's family anymore because she loved him as a man. She didn't know when it started, but she didn't want him to marry another woman. Will clapped, thinking that was great. What he said was a lie anyway. he had to go to great lengths to make her realize this. It's not like he could persuade Will to be with someone else anyway. Seline's face was now burning hot. Adele hit him continuously for being a meanie, but he thought she was cute. Seline then took off, fully confident in her feelings with love, to tell Will how she felt. All the while, Louis was taking a visit to Cordelia in the dungeon. He wanted to know why she tried to kill Seline, and Cordelia answered Seline shouldn't have tried taking what belonged to her. Regardless, she liked Seline and thought she was beautiful, adorable, and pure. He could see why his mother chose her to marry Will. She probably assumed she'd kill him. He was then shocked to hear Wilfred set her up, and the two agreed it was too dangerous to let him live. She really wanted to see Louis and Will battle to the death, and thought it was such a shame she'd be sentenced to death soon. As he was leaving, she thought about how Louis was really similar to both her and Will. While Seline was waiting for Will, she'd unexpectedly be greeted by Louis. He apologized for what happened with Cordelia, and tried explaining that Cordelia's attempted murder was all staged by Wilfred. Why else would he be so easily defeated by a girl? Seline grew anxious. Will made Cordelia stab him so she would feel sorry for him? Louis told her she didn't even realize she was being deceived and brainwashed. She tried to deny it, but Louis questioned how she could know for sure. She then answered in a way Louis wasn't expecting, by telling him she was fine with it. She accepted Will as he was, because she loved him as a man. Louis gripped his fist as she told him she intended to marry Will as soon as possible. She got up to leave, but he got desperate, grabbing her arm and putting her against the wall, telling her he really loved her. She told him to stop because she loved Will, and that's when he'd force a kiss on her. She pushed him off, and after he was done catching his breath, he'd force another kiss on her, only stopping when he realized she was crying. She told him he was cruel because she trusted him. Later, Will visited her place. The mood was somber. Seline hadn't left her room in 3 days now, and also hadn't eaten much. They wondered what was wrong. Outside her room, Will apologized for what he said to her the other day. He told her of course he wanted her to be with him for the rest of his life, and that he's been taking advantage of her sympathy towards him to keep her close. Seline could see now that's why he looked so sad. He thought she proposed to him out of pity. He felt bad for forcing engagement on her, but now wanted to wait until her heart was truly ready. Hearing her begin to cry, he entered her room to talk, and when she explained she visited 3 days ago and that Louis kissed her, his heart sank. He ended up taking it surprisingly well, especially with him learning his love was no longer one-sided. She loved him as a man. The two would kiss, with promises of being together forever. Back at home, Will violently thrashed about in his office. He was so pissed at what Louis had done. He felt like his head was going to explode because of his anger and murderous intent, but he couldn't kill Louis yet, or else he'd be no different from Cordelia, and he'd lose his future with Seline. While he was glad Seline finally saw him as a man, imposter syndrome hit. He questioned things like how long would Seline keep loving him? What if she fell for another man? He thought he wasn't the kind of person who should be loved by someone as beautiful as her. But he'd then ring his bell, calling his butler to arrange a meeting with the king. He needed to move quickly to protect Seline. At Seline's house, he presented the engagement contract signed by his father. He just needed Duke Eldred's permission, and in 6 months, they could have their wedding. Seline's father asked Will to promise to protect and love Seline for the rest of his life, and with no hesitation, Will promised to give her everything. With Will being busy from here on out, he would be assigning a bodyguard to follow Seline everywhere. In private, he told her he made a promise in exchange for the king's permission to marry. The promise was to go on a monster hunting expedition. A drake was confirmed in the forest near the second city. Right now, it was staying there quietly, but it might rampage someday. He was tasked with commanding the force to eliminate it. Seline remembered a full-scale drake was a dangerous monster with dragon-like scales, possessing strong poison and capable of breathing fire. She tried to get Will to refuse, but he assured her it was fine. Getting married to her, this was a small price to pay. She offered to go with him, since she could heal poison and injuries. He'd constantly deny her, and threatened to lock her up to keep her safe. He was just kidding though, or was he? The queen was disciplining one of the maids by beating her. Louis stopped his mom. He tried to get her to calm down, or else she'd sink her reputation even further. Recently, evidence of her crimes committed in the past were reportedly submitted to the king by Wilfred. The evidence was serious enough to endanger her position as queen, and the king was furious. She berated her son, telling Louis she's done everything to make him king, and he smirked, reminding her she lined her own pockets. So how could this possibly be all for him. Will got permission to marry the Duke's eldest daughter, despite being born of a commoner's womb. Knowing he was being sent on the subjugation of the Drake, the queen was going to use this chance to kill him. While Seline and Will were cheerfully having a meal out together in the capital, she began thinking about how today was Cordelia's execution. Even though Cordelia tried to kill her, and she was a murderer who killed lots of people, Seline couldn't help but feel a little bad because of the time they spent together. Will had gone to see Cordelia hung properly by the gallows, and she died smiling. Coming across Louis, he pinned him against the wall, pulling at his collar. The two had their stinging points towards each other. Will was at full advantage because Seline loved him, but Louis still had the fact he was able to get a kiss from Seline. The thought of it still weighed on Will. Seline managed to get on the monster hunting expedition, and she was bringing a lot of knights from the dukedom. Will sighed, knowing he couldn't stop her, but asked that she make sure no one recognized her. Riding back to her place, Will began to kiss her deeply with a bit of tongue action. She told him to wait, saying maybe it was a little too soon for that, and he got pouty because he wanted to kiss her and do more. She told him to wait until after marriage. Getting so flustered, she quickly got out to walk home, and he thought while she was being cute, he had no plans on waiting for their marriage. Later, Adele was adamant about joining Seline for the expedition. Seline tried getting Richard to stop her, but he already tried at least 100 times before coming over. He thought Adele had such a cute face. She was stubborn. That's why he was going with her. He was going to protect her with all his strength. I like how she always looks like she's so done with him. This was turning into a monster subjugation double date. During the mission, Seline became the black-haired, purple-eyed Brenda. She wore magic glasses with perception-blocking effects and took the name of Adele's maid, so she could accompany her in this form. They had the Eldred Ducal Knights, Will's personal escorts, and many additional Kingdom Knights assigned for Adele's protection by the king. Will was the main force, separate from them so he could lead the operation. Getting ambushed by a small goblin, Adele ran into Richard's arms as he shot it down with a single blast. Seline was amazed by his skill. Slaying more along the way, the party took a small break. Richard asked Adele if she'd fallen for him all over again, and he was caught off guard when she answered yes. He just wanted to hurry back home and spend time with her. They thought it was strange not having seen Will's main force, or the Drake yet. They'd been following the King's Knights as per order. But when they asked the Knights why they hadn't been keeping contact with Will using a magic tool, they suddenly brandished their weapons and surrounded our heroes. The Ducal Knights tried to help, but Adele told them to refrain. Richard figured the Knights were here to keep them separate from the main group, to prevent Adele from using her goddess powers to help Will. So, Seline decided to go alone. The Knights thought she was just some lowly maid, so they didn't care if she left. The personal bodyguard Will assigned to Seline went with her. She was shocked, stumbling upon the defeated Drake, along with several dead and bloody knights. A few hours later, Will was alerted that they'd be approaching the Drake soon. He thought with this many knights at his disposal, it'd be quick work, but also knew that likely the Queen's men would attack him. This was their best chance. The battle went in favor of Will, but when he was about to deliver the finishing strike, the knights ambushed him, and he was forced to fight them back. He figured the Queen might try something, but didn't expect every knight assigned to him to be an enemy. He called out his own men to deal with him. Some ways away, Seline found Will sitting on the ground, bloody and worn out. She ran to his side and was relieved his heart was still beating. Using her healing magic, she wondered why his complexion wasn't improving, and the bodyguard told her it was likely because he lost too much blood. They were found by another set of royal knights, and with the bodyguard getting taken down, they were going to meet their end. But Seline's desperate powers would push them back. Adele and Richard found them, and Seline passed out soon after. Seline woke up 3 days later to Jenna's relief that she was alright. Will was safe, but currently unconscious. He was receiving treatment in a safe place in the royal castle. Seline was so happy she began to cry. Things weren't all good though. News spread of Seline's strong goddess powers. Adele would explain that following the subjugation, the Ducal Knights captured all the remaining royal knights, and they confessed to attacking Will by the Queen's orders. Will gave the same testimony, so it'd be difficult for the Queen to cover up such a large-scale assassination. 5 days later, Seline was appraised by the Archbishop to have even greater goddess powers than Adele. A lot of things were going to change for her from here on. Even though the people testified the Queen was guilty of the assassination attempt, since there was no physical evidence, she hadn't been prosecuted yet. Seline was so happy to see Will again, she ran into his arms. He rested on her shoulder. During that last battle, he really thought he was going to die. He was scared that he might never see her again. The two kissed, and he shoved her, holding her hands down. He wanted to feel more alive, to feel like she was really by his side. He He asked if that was alright, and she told him yes. That's when the kissing got deeper. And the queen was delving deeper into crashing out over her hatred of Seline for foiling her plans. She lost so many nights, the king wouldn't even see her right now. She decided to give Louis a vial containing precious medicine imported from a foreign land. It possessed a charm spell effect. It wouldn't last long, but long enough for Louis to have a child with Seline. The queen didn't like her, but if she had her son's baby, she'd consider making her a second wife. Louis refused though. He didn't need something like this. He would only take action if Will harmed Seline, and the queen wasn't happy about that. Everyone who has gotten in her way was dead. She had no qualms about killing anyone. A celebration was ongoing for the two sisters with the power of the goddess. The people were joyous over the newly awakened Seline and her fiancé, the second prince, who was said to have defeated a drake. Seline decided to get some fresh air, and somehow managed to come across Louis. She hadn't seen him since the day he forced himself on her. She quickly turned to leave, but he stopped her. He tried apologizing again, but of course, she wasn't going to forgive him. She thought of him as kind and wonderful. He's always treated her well. And as a person, she loved him, but there was no guarantee he wouldn't try again what he did before. Louis felt terrible, knowing things could never go back to the way they were before. The party ended safely, and it was time to head home. Suddenly, blood started to drip out of Celine's mouth, and she fell to the floor. Adele tried to heal her, but her magic wasn't working. Will visited later, and we learned she somehow drank a slow-acting poison during the party. It was a special poison that magic couldn't cure. Luckily, the doctor managed to make an antidote, but it was still a close call. Will knew this had to be the queen's doing. When he first came to the castle, the same thing happened to him. The queen was the type who left no evidence. She was quite bothersome. So from now on, Will was going to come sleep here with Seline every night. That way, she'd be absolutely safe. He'd just come via teleportation magic. While Seline felt safer by his side, she wondered why she also felt a little uneasy about this. The clock struck 11. Will returned to Celine's room from his day of work. He was glad to see she waited for him, but told her she could have just slept. And kissing her hair, he asked if she was nervous because she'd be sleeping next to him. She suddenly got up, flushed face, and steamy to say she was going to sleep right now. Laying face to face, Will reminisced on how it had been a while since he slept in her room. He used to secretly come here sometimes because he had scary dreams. But Seline was surprised to find out that was a lie. He just wanted to be with her back then, too. With endearment, she replied, "Oh, you." She used to be nervous about getting caught by her father, and even now, it kind of felt like she was doing something bad. And that's when Will told her that maybe they should. He pulled his lips towards her, and then climbed on top. There was a moment of deep passion, but he stopped because he didn't want her to lose sleep, even though he wanted more. She was very bashful, covering up to her nose with the sheets, and when she fell asleep, he kissed her forehead, got up, and continued his work at a desk. Thanks to him, she slept really well, and since then, he'd come to her room every night. During the day, she practiced handling her goddess powers and received princess training as Will's fiancé. On a particular evening, Will brought up that Richard's been getting annoying with his public displays of affection. Seline knew that next week, Adele planned to tell Richard she loved him, but even then, the king and queen haven't given up on getting Adele to marry Louis. That night, when they slept, Seline woke up to find Will was gone and saw blood on the floor. He left a note for her, explaining he'd be a bit busy, and he'd come to see her as soon as things settled down. She hadn't seen him in 4 days now. He wouldn't tell her about the blood, but said he was fine. With Seline heading to her daily lessons, she spotted Adele and Richard, and was about to say hello, until she heard Adele bring up that the daughter of Earl Ames proposed to him recently. Richard got nervous that she found out, but told her it was nothing she needed to worry about. But of course, she was worried. She finally admitted that she loved him and didn't want him to get engaged to another woman. She wanted to tell him sooner, but she was just being stubborn. Richard fell to the floor. He was so happy he could die. He'd been waiting all this time, but hearing her say it was more powerful than he imagined. He thought maybe he should have reacted more maturely, but that was okay. She liked that about him. The two gave a warm embrace, deciding to act like a couple from here on out. That night, Will finally came back. He apologized for not having been here for the past few days, and he'd be gone for a few more, while leaving guards with her in his stead. He didn't think any assassins would come here. In the meantime, he was also getting things prepared for their wedding on his side. It was going to happen in 3 more months. He was considering buying a mansion in the royal capital because it was too dangerous to have Seline live in the royal palace. That aside, Seline needed to prepare herself because once their wedding happened, Will had no plans to let her sleep that day. He'd been holding himself back long enough. On another day, It was good news from Adele. Their father approved her engagement to Richard. She took off to go see him for the day. Will then came in to see Seline. He missed her, having been gone the last 5 days, and she noticed his sleeve had some red on it. His excuse was that it was probably from the trash he was cleaning up just now. Guys, this gotta be one of the worst lies I've ever heard. Even Seline could tell he was killing again. With a smile, Will explained the other day, 6 men broke into her room, and he admitted to have just killed the last one. The queen did it, of course. That was what the blood in her room was about. It took him a while to find and kill everyone who escaped. That's why he's been gone lately. He confirmed that the queen hired a group, and he's gathered evidence of her other crimes. He planned on accusing her in 3 months. Right now, he was threatening her and keeping her under surveillance so she couldn't do anything. The only reason he was holding off was because when a member of the royal family committed a crime, all celebrations, including weddings, of other royal family members would be prohibited for 1 year as per the law. Before that, he needed to destroy the king as well. The king had committed a lot of crimes carelessly and solved everything with power and murder. Will thought he was even harder to deal with than the queen. Bad news though, Richard would come into the room with Adele to say the first prince had just accused the queen of a crime. The queen stormed into her son's office, and when she asked why he was doing this to her, he answered it was going to come out eventually. Better to hear it from him rather than Wilfred. She was distraught, realizing Louis had done this to stop Celine's marriage. This guy was really desperate. Louis had the guards take his mother away, and even though she'd never forgive him, he'd continue on like nothing had happened. Staring at the love potion his mother had given him to seduce Seline, he swore he'd never let her get married. Will wished he had killed Louis first. Richard asked Adele to step out for a bit, with the excuse the conversation was about to get complicated. He would then bring to the table the one loophole to get out of this. Have Seline get pregnant with Will's child. She wasn't ready for that. But for the royal family, securing an heir was the highest priority. Richard had learned about this when reading through all the documents in the royal archive. That was one of his talents. Richard never forgot something when he read it, even once. Since the queen hadn't been sentenced yet, they still had time. And if Seline got pregnant, the marriage could proceed as planned. Will could tell Seline felt a little unsure about intercourse before marriage, so he assured her it was okay. They just had to lie. Since there was no way to verify it, they just needed to prepare fake evidence of her pregnancy. It still came at a cost though. If it became public knowledge there was premarital intimacy, Celine's virtuous image would be damaged. But she'd be fine, as long as she could tell her family the truth. Riding back with Richard, Will let out his frustration. After taking everything from Louis, he was going to drive him to despair and kill him slowly with his own hands. Richard was surprised Louis liked Seline so much to the point he'd sell out his own mother. Thinking about how earnestly Louis loved her all this time, he sympathized. But new love didn't always reward everyone. The plan was for them to eat at the royal castle and have Seline pretend she got drunk. Then have her stay in Will's room. Thing is, she wasn't confident in her acting and ended up drinking more than she should have. While the two doted over each other, they came across Louis in the hall, and in front of him, Will told Seline they should head to his room and walked right past him. Louis would command his butler to watch Seline until she returned home. He was nervous. Seline and Will sat bedside, and she felt really uneasy. Will's plan was to just mess up the bed and spill some blood. He was worried though that once they investigated, they might dig even deeper than expected using magic. The two started making out, and when he got on top of her, he asked that they practice a little harder today. There might be eavesdroppers, so he wanted to touch a bit more. He tried lifting under her dress, but stopped himself. She was just too cute. He didn't think he'd be able to control himself any longer, but she grabbed at his shirt. She was worried someone might find out if they didn't do anything. If that happened, their wedding would be postponed. Louis accused his own mother, so she reasoned he'd be the one to make sure there was a thorough investigation. She wasn't upset about going all the way with Will, just a little embarrassed, but it also made her feel comfortable and happy. She told Will she didn't mind, and he was a little stun-locked. He began to kiss her again, and now he wasn't going to hold back. They continued, clothes coming off, going all the way. By the end of it, Will was so happy, he felt like he could die. He's always imagined touching her. She had to cover his mouth. She didn't want things to keep getting more embarrassing. But for her, he was even more than she imagined. She thought he was so handsome, yet strong and alluring. She really felt how much he loved her. Giving her a loving kiss on her forehead, he told her he was glad she enjoyed it, and they could do it a lot more from now on. The next day, after seeing her off, he came back to chat with Richard. Honestly, this next part shocked me when it shouldn't at this point. Will owed all of last night to Louis. Thanks to him making a fuss, what they did last night spread instantly. It was a calculated move by Will. He deliberately took the long way back to his room, passing by the place Louis walked every night. And by seeing him, it also stirred up Seline's anxiety. Will never forced her though. She chose on her own. Richard was glad he was born a man, and Will didn't like him that way. Last night, Louis was seething with his butler delivering the news. Will and Seline definitely had premarital intercourse. He tried to deny it, thinking there was no way Seline would do something like that. In his eyes, Will had defiled her. He thought Seline was being deceived, and he had to save her before it was too late. While Adele and Seline were chatting over tea, Richard surprised his girl from behind. He just finished work and happened to be walking along the main street. The girls didn't notice that they were the center of attention here. They were the two most talked about in the country. They discussed the fact that the queen was already being put on trial. Normally, it wouldn't happen so fast, but was a sign of how serious Louis was. Luckily, they were one step ahead, since Seline and Will made it happen. Adele immediately went red. She didn't know they had actually done it. She thought they had just faked it like they planned. That evening, Jenna would deliver a letter from Will that said he had suffered a terrible injury and needed help. It told her to come to the castle without anyone knowing, because someone was trying to kill him and he couldn't make it public. She rushed over, but instead of being met by Will, she was met by Louis. She was distraught, hearing it wasn't Will that called her here. He did. He prepared a letter imitating Wilfred's handwriting just to call her over. While Wilfred was far away from the castle, she banged on the door, calling for somebody to help her, but got no answer. It was useless, because Louis sealed the room off with magic. She couldn't get out, and her voice wouldn't reach anyone. He had her against the door, thinking he had no choice since he couldn't secure a future with her. Even her goddess protective barrier wasn't working. In this room, no one could use magic but him. Restricting magic to a single user was extremely complex. She could tell he deliberately prepared all this before luring her here. He told her he loved her and just wanted her to love him back. He forced a kiss on her and dropped the empty vial, telling her to swallow it all. She wanted to spit it out, but couldn't breathe. Now, he was telling her to look him in the eyes, and she was entranced. She couldn't stop wanting to touch Louis so badly. When Will began heading back after his meeting, Richard rushed to him, panting. Seline was missing. The assigned bodyguard noticed Wilfred still hadn't come to where Seline was supposed to be. He attempted to enter the room, but Louis's knights drew their blades. He shot a spell at the door, but it blocked his magic. Louis could see the drug was starting to work. It could charm anyone, but only for half a day. It was at its strongest about 6 hours after drinking. His plan was to make her have his child first, so she could have no future with Wilfred. He knew he had fallen low, using his brother as bait, and relying on a drug like this was disgusting. This was how his mother got the queen's title. He swore he'd never be like her. He knew when she'd wake up after the drug wore off, she'd hate him. She'd cry and curse him, never want to look at him again. But even then, he didn't want to give her to Wilfred. At first, he was just curious. He saw Seline as selfish, stupid, and helpless. But suddenly, she became a different person. The more he got involved, the more he was drawn to her. She was just so straightforward, cheerful, and kind. He wondered if this was because he grew up surrounded by greedy parents and people desperate to cozy up to him as the first prince. He felt safe and happy with Seline. He wondered what was wrong with him. He thought he was living a more upright life than Wilfred until not too long ago. He could have used his power and status to make her his fiancée, but respected her wish to marry someone she truly loved. He told her he loved her and waited for her to turn back on him. He got on top of her, kissed her while apologizing. His eyes widened as he realized that despite the drug being in full effect, she was crying, just like that time before. He couldn't believe this. He tested it on other people. It was supposed to be absolute. He couldn't believe she liked Wilfred that much. He wiped a tear, feeling he loved to see her laugh the most, and sat up, palm on his face, thinking he was half-assed at everything. That's when the door burst open, and Will appeared panting, blood on his sleeve. He saw a hickey on Seline's neck, and was ready to kill Louis right now. Prior to this, he and Richard rushed on horseback to the castle. Will felt he was careless. He didn't think Louis would resort to harming Seline, no matter how ruthless he was to him or the queen. Will assumed Louis was doing what his mother had done. The queen wasn't from a noble house, and the king never loved her. She used a love potion on him to create fait accompli. That's how Louis was conceived in the first place. Will had trouble where they were at. since the castle was so big, so he filled the entire palace with magic to find the one place where it would get blocked. It took a huge toll, but he found it right away. Arriving at the room, his guard had already killed Louis's knights, but he had no way of getting past Louis's barrier. So, Will placed his hand on the doors and smashed through with Richard's help. Will grabbed Louis by the collar and threw him aside. He punched him in the face over and over, saying, "How dare you do this to Seline? You were important to her. She trusted you!" As Will was about to stab, Richard told him to stop. Killing him now would only worsen his own position. Louis told Will to kill him, but was surprised with the blade only landing beside his head. At the end of it all, Will didn't want to make Seline sad. He knew she'd blame herself if Louis died here, but he'd definitely send Louis to the gallows at some point. Will looked at Seline with sadness and apologized. Back at Richard's estate, Adele was crying, scared, and worried. Richard told her to head out so he could talk to Will for a bit. Will was relieved, knowing after a doctor's examination, Louis only made an attempt and hadn't succeeded. Regardless though, Seline would be subject to the rumors of infidelity that happened within the castle. Richard thought Will was strong. Had Louis done that to Adele, he would have killed the prince for sure. With Richard leaving the room, Will thanked him. With the couple alone, things took an unfortunate turn. Seline opened her eyes and called for Louis. He reached towards her, and she slapped his hand away, acting wary. She wanted him to let her go, and then continued searching for Prince Louis. He grabbed her from behind, and she told him to stop it, that she hated it. And seeing the hickey on her neck, he began to cry. He knew it was the potion's fault, but watching her push him away, it was too painful, incredibly agonizing. She wouldn't even look at him. She woke up to Adele by her side. She felt horrified, remembering what had happened up to the point of Louis kissing the potion into her mouth. She couldn't remember anything after. Adele assured her she wasn't at fault, but after learning what had happened and the effects of the potion lingered, even after being brought here, Seline felt terrible. She exited the room, finding Will a hot mess with bags under his eyes. She cried and apologized. Now she could see she really hurt him, and he embraced her. He blamed himself for failing to protect her, but he was glad she was back to normal. She told him she only loved him. She decided to rest more, and with him beginning to leave, she grabbed at him, wondering if he hated her now. He told her she did nothing wrong, and that he was just a weak, foolish man. He admitted having nowhere to put these feelings. He didn't kill the bastard he loathed. He let him touch her, even if it was just a little, and he put her in danger. Everything hurt. He felt sad, he felt angry, and he felt regret. He felt like he was going crazy. Even though Seline was hurt, he wanted to kiss and touch her. He wanted to overwrite everything. He couldn't help thinking so selfishly. He thought it was better for her not to be with someone like him. She then suddenly pulled him in for a kiss and told him she wanted him to touch her. They continued, and this time, he didn't think he could be gentle. They had gone until she passed out. He swore he wouldn't let anyone hurt her again. The next day, the four ate at an incredible, luxurious restaurant. This place was so popular and notorious, it was hard to get a reservation. Usually, you had to wait years. But Will being the second prince definitely made things easier. Much time passed since the incident. Seline prepared quietly for the day of her wedding. Adele handled much of their goddess power duties in her place, and Louis was placed under house arrest at the palace. What happened between the first prince and the second prince's fiancé could never be made public. Even her parents didn't know what happened that day. On top of that, they found no love potion in her body, so if Louis claimed it was consensual, it'd end badly. After their meal, Seline felt a bit sick. She told Adele she was fine, and that maybe she ate too much. She decided to have a physician check her later. In the carriage, Will let out his anger in front of Richard. He felt Seline was pushing herself too hard. He wanted to deal with Louis before the wedding, but the king was getting in his way. The king would pull any trick in the book to protect his heir. The only saving grace was that the first prince showed no signs of resistance. Will couldn't forgive Louis though, no matter how sorry he was. Even the queen with her crimes would only get prison for life. The king was getting too much in the way for Will's liking. He had to kill them all. Seline met with Wilhelmina, who helped arrange for a doctor. She wasn't seriously ill, but felt off for weeks now. She didn't want to worry Will or Adele. The doctor would congratulate Seline. She was pregnant, about 3 months along. Her poor health was just early symptoms. She couldn't believe there was a baby in her belly. It was her and Wilfred's child. She was so happy. Adele began to tear up once she heard the news. She gave her congratulations. They told their parents in time, who still thought they were just pretending. This would definitely shock them. It made Seline so happy, knowing Will was finally going to have a real family. That was the first thing she thought about when she found out she was pregnant. Will's parents nearly killed him, and he's been on his own ever since. She wanted to give him a warm and happy family. Meanwhile, Will was frustrated. He called out to one of his personal men to tell Richard they would make their move in 3 days. Richard thought it was way too sudden, but Will explained his father demanded he back off the issue with the first prince. The king said he'd make things public if he didn't. This would brand Seline with a shameful scandal of she cheated on her fiancé with the first prince. Even a bastard like his father cared about his children. Richard was determined to remove the king regardless. He was the center of the rot in this country. They couldn't fight fairly though. The king's political power would crush them, so their plan was to kill him in 3 days. No matter what happened, Richard promised to stick by Will's side to the end. Plus, getting revenge on the man who killed his parents would lift a huge weight off him, but could see Will seemed unsure about keeping it from Seline. He could tell it bothered him. Late one evening, Seline and Will went on a walk together. He suddenly told her he was going to kill the king. There were a number of reasons for it, but at the end of it all, he couldn't forgive him. He wanted to keep it to himself, but ended up saying it anyway. Maybe he wanted her to accept him after he'd taken the ultimate revenge. She knew he probably agonized over it before deciding, probably because of her. She couldn't fully understand his pain, and she knew saying this was selfish and cruel, but she didn't want him to kill anyone. Before he could respond, she admitted she was carrying their baby. Ooh, what an unfortunate place we have to stop. We are 100% caught up. There's nothing else up to this recording. Now, I want to give a little bit of my thoughts. The writing of this story felt a bit generic at first, considering I had already covered a manhwa about an obsessive prince. You should consider checking out my video on it, if you haven't seen it yet. That one I think was a little better written in the beginning, but I think about halfway, somewhere around the chapters where Will reflected on how bad he felt about manipulating Seline to being with him, and feeling guilty about it all, this series had much stronger payoff, and the writing picked up. You might not like this, but I think Will's psychopathic lengths of manipulation for love are very realistic. You're hearing this from a guy who used to really think about things to the lengths that he would, minus the killing. The climax was definitely the part where Louis used the love potion on Seline. Oh my god. My stomach was squeezing at that part. If he had actually forced her, I really would have gone sick to my stomach. That was some good writing and drama though, especially with him reflecting on where things had gone wrong. Very good series. Let me know what you guys think. I want to add Adele and Richard are such a cute couple as well. Who's your favorite guy? Do you want me to come back to it when the series finishes? Subscribe for more content. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.